Welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Chapter 41 Kill Quickly. Ding. A crisp sound of metal collision sounded. Qing Ming's instantaneous body technique was unable to practice it. The level of LV2 made him unable to achieve the effect of television in front of the lower ninja. Therefore, before Qing Ming took action, the Yan Yinan reacted and raised kawaii to block Shiraishi's assault. However, because of the previous arm injury, the strength was not very strong and he was easily suppressed by Qing Ming. Looking at the other party's arms, Qing Ming's eyes flashed slightly, and the kunai in his hand was cut or stabbed, and in the blink of an eye, he launched dozens of attacks. Even though Ioniki tried his best to resist, he still couldn't keep up with his rhythm. Finally, Qing Ming found an opportunity after swinging out Cuba again, and kicked his right foot out with force. Bang! The dull sound of impact came. Yinan felt his left arm numb and he flew backwards. Qing Ming refused to give in, and before his right foot was withdrawn, he quickly threw out 3 shurikens, and with the blessing of LV3's ninja tool throwing, he pointed directly at the 3 key points. Immediately conscious of the danger, Yoniu Shinen hurriedly dodged. Unfortunately, he was in midair and had nowhere to leverage his strength. He tried his best to twist his body and avoided too. In the end, a shuriken hit his thigh. Blood was pouring out, and the shuriken that Qing Ming threw was stabbed into the artery of his leg. The body fell to the ground. Ioniki couldn't stand steadily, his body staggered, and a depressing groan also made a sound from his mouth. And at this moment, Qing Ming used the momentum body technique, and appeared behind him quietly. A chill came from his back and his heart, beads of sweat as big as beans slid down from Yan Yining's forehead, and a strong sense of despair emanated from him. Don't want. A nearly begging voice came into Qing Ming's ears. But he was unmoved. Puchi. The sound of sharp blades entering the flesh sounded. Ioniki's pupils suddenly dilated, and blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. Ho ****************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** Qing Ming pulled out the Kuwu heart without expression. Puff. A mouthful of blood spurted out from Yan Yingxia Ren's mouth. Immediately afterwards, he fell to the ground and completely lost his life. After killing the opponent, Qing Ming glanced around and then ran towards Shizuko Mizutani without stopping. The other party's body technique is already weak, and now he is besieged by two Yanyan Shanin. The situation is no longer optimistic. Qing Ming must rescue as soon as possible. There was no accident. After he was replaced by the main attack, in less than 3 minutes, the two Iron Hidden Shinin fell to the ground. Afterwards, Qing Ming did not rest and once again locked his target on the two Iwakashijinin who were fighting with Ryosuke. Just like just now, after he and Shizuko Mizutani joined, the two Iwahiko Shizuko had no room for resistance and were killed in just a few minutes. Qing Ming and the other two are the only three Squinars on Konoha's side, so Iwai is also the Squinars who were separated from them. This was an arrangement that was so normal that it was no longer normal. 2 against 1, and both were inferior ninjas. In theory, Iwa ninjas could not lose. However, they did not expect that the variable Qing Ming appeared in it, called the Shinin, but in fact the combat power was far beyond the Shinin level. In the end, a mistake caused the death of 6 Iwai Shinin. But that's the end. Just after he killed 6 Iwaki Shinin, he finally attracted the attention of other Iwaki Shinin. Immediately, 3 Iwaki Shinin gave up their opponents and rushed straight towards him. Seeing this, Qing Ming looked at Ryosuke and Shizuko Mizutani behind him without looking back, and said, "Help me hold the person on the left." Okay. ×2. After fighting together for so long, Ryosuke and Shizuko Mizutani had a lot of trust in Ao Ming. Therefore, after he spoke, he agreed immediately without any hesitation. After receiving a positive answer, Qing Ming no longer wasted his time. He kicked the ground with his feet and rushed towards the two Iwai Zongren on the right. Swish 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 swish. Several shurikens flew towards us. Qing Ming's body shook slightly, as if he was wearing a flower butterfly, easily avoiding the attack. Seeing this, the two Iwaki Chunin's already serious faces looked even more gloomy. They were not surprised that Qing Ming could avoid this wave of attack. After all, it must be a bit capable of killing 6 of their 6 ninjas in a short period of time. But what they didn't expect was that Qing Ming would dodge so easily, and several shurikens almost wiped his body. This seems simple, but it is actually very dangerous. Not only is the ninja required to be bold and meticulous, and be calm before the attack arrives, but the ninja also requires that they have a clear judgment on the opponent's attack. Otherwise, not only will you not save energy, but you may also splash your blood. So, generally speaking, if you are not sure, the ninja will leave some margin. But obviously, Qing Ming did not. This made the two Iwaki Chunin's attitude towards him a little more cautious. All this seems long, but it actually happens in an instant. After avoiding the attack of the two shurikens, Qing Ming's speed continued to decrease. In the blink of an eye, he came to the two of them, followed by the sound of ding-dang kunai fighting. Thanks to the hard work of the past month, his practical experience has increased greatly. At this time, facing the joint attacks of two Iwahidunkun Zongnan again, he was no longer as passive as he was in the ambush when he came. However, his purpose is not just to hold the other party back. Qing Ming swept across the battlefield with his afterlight. On the side of the Hinnan, although Konoha was at a disadvantage, neither side had any casualties. On the side of the middle and lower ninja, in addition to the 6 Iwakashi's ninja he killed, there was also 1 Iwakashi's Zong ninja and 2 Iwakashi's ninja who died at the hands of other teammates. However, Konoha also paid the price of 2 Zongnin to kill these 3 enemies with less and more. In other words, there are 6 upper ninjas, 8 middle ninjas, and 1 lower ninjas. And what about them? Apart from the 2 upper ninjas and 2 special upper ninjas, there are only 4 middle ninjas and 3 lower ninjas from their class 17. 4 plus 3 versus 8 plus 1, he has to kill at least 2 or 3 Iwaki Zongnin to maintain a certain balance in the battlefield of Zongxia Nin. As for the upper ninja battlefield, that's not something he can participate and influence. What Qing Ming can do is to ensure that the battlefield here does not collapse as much as possible. No matter how many, I forgive him for being powerless. Unless he is willing to expose the Sharingan. But Qing Ming would not do this unless it was absolutely necessary. The Sharingan is his trump card, and the reason why the trump card is called a trump card is that it has the effect of decisiveness. Although his Sharingan is just a single Guju, combined with the magic sharing technique that has been learned, even the Supreme Ninja will be affected to a certain extent when it is suddenly attacked. Ninjas are all crispy. As long as they can seize this opportunity, not to mention killing the enemy on the spot, there is no problem with severe damage. In this way, he will have a chance to run away. Therefore, unless he is forced to have no choice, he will not use the Sharingan. Chapter 42 Time. Retracting his thoughts, Qing Ming put his eyes on the Iwai Zongnan in front of him. The battle continues. Qing Ming fought against 2 with 1, and did not lose at all. But this is only temporary. Qing Ming has only one person after all. Faced with the joint attack of the 2, there will inevitably be mistakes over time. So, we must fight quickly. Single quote. If you want to fight quickly, you must first get rid of the current entanglement situation. If you keep fighting in close combat, you will not be able to use your advantages at all. What are his advantages? Of course, it is the ninja tool throw of LV3 and the ninjutsu that generally rises to LV2. As soon as he thought of this, Qing Ming began to think about countermeasures. When he saw Ryosuke and Shizuko Mizutani in the hands of the Iwaki Nakanori, he suddenly had an idea. So, in the next battle, Qing Ming would turn his attention there from time to time. Whenever the 2 were injured, he would show anxiety at the right time. And these changes were naturally seen by the 2 Iwaki Zongnan. The 2 looked at each other, and everything was silent. Qing Ming also saw their changes and was silent. Now, both sides are waiting for an opportunity. Finally, for some reason, Shizuko Mizutani accidentally scratched her arm by the Iwai Hikaru, and was bleeding. The intense pain made Shizuko Mizutani scream involuntarily. Seeing this, Qing Ming's face changed slightly, as if his attention was distracted, and his dodging movement slowed down a little. Then, with a sting sound, Qing Ming's clothes on his left shoulder were scratched by a rock ninja, and a little scarlet red seeped out of the thorn. Seeing this scene, another Iwai Zongnan's eyes lit up, and he quickly waved the Kyubi in his hand and pointed directly at Qing Ming's vital points. Qing Ming's next performance perfectly interprets what it means to be slow step by step. Before, Qing Ming was unable to dodge, and although his injury was not serious, it could even be said to be unimportant, the rhythm of the battle was disrupted. Therefore, under the attack of another Iwa ninja, he could only retreat step by step. The Iron Ninja, who was the first to hurt Qing Ming, also took the opportunity to launch a fierce attack on him. In the end, Qing Ming couldn't resist it and was found an opportunity by one person and kicked it in the right arm. Even if Qing Ming hadn't blocked his arm at a critical moment, this kick would probably have kicked him in the head. By then, it would be not as simple as flying out. That's right, after hitting this kick, Qing Ming couldn't help but fly out to the left rear. But what neither of the 2 rock ninjas noticed was that Qing Ming thrust the ground as his feet flew out of the ground, making the speed of flying backwards faster. However, even if they noticed it, they wouldn't care, because they didn't plan to give Qing Ming a breath. Swish 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 swish. Several shurikens and kuna were thrown out by 2 Iwa ninjas and chased Qing Ming who was flying backwards. Not only that, they themselves followed closely behind, ready to complete the final blow at any time. Qing Ming is very familiar with this kind of attack method that takes advantage of the situation, because just a while ago, he just killed a Iwai Shinen in this way. No need to guess, Qing Ming also knew that no matter whether he could avoid this wave of shuriken and Kyab's attacks, the moment he landed, he would welcome a series of attacks from 2 Iwaki Junin. At that time, if he fails to react, he will be killed on the spot by 2 Iwaki Zongnan behind him, just like the Iwaki Shinen who was killed by him. Even if he reacts and loses the initiative, he will be in danger. It seems that his situation is very bad. However, Qing Ming's face was not at all panic, and he was even a little complacent. Bang bang bang. Shuriken and Kuna shot from two Iwaki Junin all hit Qing Ming. However, the sound was not the sound of a sharp blade entering the flesh, but rather a bit like being stuck on a wood. Etc. It's not like it, but it's really stuck in the wood. I saw Qing Ming who fell to the ground, and at some point turned into a piece of wood, filled with shuriken and kuna. Seeing this scene, the two Iwa ninjas who were about to step forward to finish the attack stopped together and said in surprise, "Stand up." They were not surprised that Qing Ming knew the stand-in technique, but they were surprised that Qing Ming could use the stand-in technique in such a short time. Even if they are, they may not be able to succeed. However, these are not important for the time being. What is important is where Qing Ming is now. Two Iwaki Zongnin had rich combat experience and immediately swept to a nearby place suitable for hiding. Then, they saw Qing Ming standing on the tree branch. Fire escaped the art of the great fireball. Qing Ming put his right hand in front of his mouth and spit out a huge red fireball. The rolling heat waves came, and the two iron ninjas hurriedly dodged, but because they missed the opportunity, even though they were quick to move, they were still affected by the explosion of fireballs. Bang! A Yanran fell to the ground in a mess, not caring about taking a breath, and hurriedly held the tree trunk and was about to stand up. But at this moment, a kunai flew from the smoke and dust. The iron ninja quickly turned to one side of his body and avoided the attack. However, before he could be happy, he saw the kunai flew to the tree, suddenly changed direction and circled back from the other side of the tree. Sizzy. A sound of steel wire rubbing sounded. Before the Iwajan could react, his body was tied to the tree. At this time, he realized that behind the kunai was a thin steel wire, which was tied to the tree. Iwahiko Chunin seemed to have thought of something, and said intimately, "Not good," and was about to get out, but at this time his arms were bound by steel wire and could not be sealed at all, so he could only use brute force. But steel wire is not so easy to break free. Just as he was struggling, a wire of fire appeared from the smoke and dust, burning straight towards him along the steel wire like a fire dragon. Ah! The painful wailing sounded throughout the battlefield, and it took several breaths before gradually disappearing. Tread. Qing Ming slowly walked out of the smoke and dust, looked at the charred Yanyan Zongnan, who was still dead, and threw a kunai out of his hand, ending his life. Then, he looked at a short distance to the right, where there was a Iwa ninja who was struggling, one of the two who besieged him. At this time, several shurikens were inserted into the other party, and blood was rushing out. He wanted to get up several times, but they all ended in failure. There is no doubt that these shurikens are also Qing Ming's hands. Just now, he took advantage of the smoke to briefly open the Sharingan. With this, he used his mind in two ways, not only used the kana and the steel wire to trap the Iwa ninja in front of him, but also sent the shuriken into the body of another Iwa ninja. Looking at the struggling Ionin, Qing Ming shook his head and threw out a kunai to end the other party's pain. At this point, both Iwai Zongnan have been killed by him. Looking back at the entire battle process, the turning point can be said to start with that kick. After determining the battlefield strategy for quick battle, Qing Ming was hinting that the other party attached great importance to the situation of his companions. Thanks to his age advantage and his previous killing of his opponent, he immediately rescued Ryosuke and Shizuko Mizutani. The two Iwaki Nakanomiya did not doubt this. So, after Qing Ming was injured by Shizuko Mizutani and showed a state of concern and chaos, the two of them did not doubt anything. Afterwards, Qing Ming naturally revealed his flaws, and the two of them were indeed deceived. The moment he was kicked away, Qing Ming knew that his plan had been successful. Although the opponent's attacks were smoothly connected later, his stand-in-one technique had been practiced early to the perfect state of LV3. In addition, when he leaves the ground, he deliberately accelerates his time to win, which is enough for him to use the stand-in-one technique. From this moment on, he changed from passive to active. First, while the opponent was unprepared, a fire escape Rao fireball technique was smashed and caught the opponent off guard. Then, Sharingan cooperated with the non-audible instrument throwing, which trapped and seriously injured the two. And then there is what he just did. Ship directly started with the fire escape dragon fire technique, and attacked the trapped Iwai Zongnan from a distance, leaving him with no chance to escape at all. After both of them lost their combat power, they calmly finished the fight and they were all over. In general, the entire process of this battle was not out of his control, and he could only take a little risk when turning passive into activeness. But that little bit of danger is also within Qing Ming's tolerance. Not to mention that he is 90% sure that he can successfully perform the stand-in technique. Even if he does not perform it, he can still expose the Sharingan to avoid subsequent attacks. So, in general, the risk is not that high. However, these two Iwaki Zongnan were also unlucky. They did not use any decent ninja skills throughout the whole process, and were caught by Qing Ming and took them away directly. From this, we can also see how important the battle between ninjas is to grasp the timing. Chapter 43. Targeting. After killing 2 Iwaki Zongnin, Qing Ming took a short rest and had to do the same thing, assist Ryosuke and Shizuko Mizutani to kill another Iwaki. But at this moment, a slight sound of breaking through the air suddenly came from the side, and Qing Ming instinctively retreated, and then he saw a kunai swiftly passing by. Qing Ming suddenly turned his head and looked in the direction where Kuwu was shooting. Iwaki Nashin suddenly escaped from the battle to siege Konoha Nashin and walked slowly towards him. Qing Ming's expression froze and cursed inwardly, "MD, I don't follow the rules, I've beaten the younger ones, right? Before, it would be fine if I killed a few Sha Nin and came to Zhang Nin to deal with him. Anyway, there is no qualitative difference between Sha Nin and Zhang Nin. But now, isn't it a bit unreasonable to change to ninja to target him?" Qing Ming turned his attention to Furukawa. However, Furukawa just glanced at this side quickly, made a hidden gesture to delay time at him, and then ignored it. Seeing this, Qing Ming gave up at that time. It is better to seek yourself than to ask others. Single quote. Qing Ming's thoughts moved slightly, barely calmed down his mind, and began to analyze the advantages and disadvantages of both parties. First of all, his chakra is enough for the time being. In the few battles just now, he did not perform much ninjutsu, and he consumed only a limited amount of chakra, and there are still about 1,500 points left. This is already a lot of chakra in the state of Chunin, and it is enough to support a battle. Secondly, his Sharingan has not been exposed yet. If used well, you can rewrite the situation at critical moments. This is equivalent to having a guarantee, which allows him to face the enemy more calmly. Finally, and most importantly, that is, the other party is by no means a true Suzunin, otherwise Furukawa would not have allowed him to delay time. Because no matter the strength he showed on weekdays or the combat power he had just killed the enemy one after another, it was not enough to fight against a true ninja. But since Furukawa asked him to delay time, it means he is capable of doing this. With the strength he has shown so far, the limit he can deal with is that he is a special ninja. In other words, the other party is likely to be just a very powerful person. As soon as I thought of this, Qing Ming became more confident. Most of the tension that suddenly faced Shangren disappeared. He is not sure about fighting a Shangnin who has experienced many battles and comprehensive abilities, but if the enemy is just a special Shangnin with outstanding abilities, he will still dare to touch it. However, before this, it is better to leave this battlefield first. In this way, when you have to use the Sharingan, the risk of exposure can be minimized. As soon as he thought of this, Qing Ming suddenly used the momentum body technique and rushed towards the outside of the battlefield behind him. Seeing this, Shiraishi Kuroto smiled grimly and immediately jumped over to chase him. The two of them chased and fled and left the battlefield. A few minutes later, somewhere in the forest, Qing Ming is moving rapidly. Suddenly, several kamikaze attacked from behind. Qing Ming dodged sideways, and kamikaze nailed to the trunk in front of him, making a sizzling sound. Qing Ming looked closely and saw a detonation talisman tied behind one of the kunai. The fire was swaying and was about to explode. Qing Ming said intimately, "Not good," and quickly retreated. Boom! A violent explosion sounded. The red flame swept through several meters of distance. The shock wave caused by the explosion of the detonation talisman spread out at a visible speed of flesh, causing the trees in the forest to creak. A moment later, a cough sounded. In the smoke and dust, a figure was vaguely struggling to get up. The next moment, a kunai shot out, nailing the figure tightly. Ah! The figure seemed to have been severely injured and screamed. On the tree branch, Shiraishi Kuroto took back his arm and looked at all this expressionlessly. Suddenly, several shurikens flew from the smoke and dust and rushed towards Shiraishi Kuroto's face. HMPH. A trick of a scammer. Seeing this, Shiraishi Kuroto snorted coldly, and he pulled out the short knife that was slantingly on his waist. Then he heard a jingling sound, and all the shurikens attacking him were slashed down with one blow. The smoke and dust dissipated, Qing Ming walked out from behind the tree, and the afterimage of the clone on the side dissipated. This phantom created by the clone technique can play a little more effective in the case of poor vision. Head-on battle. Then forget it. With his eyes removed from the clone, Shiraishi Kuroto looked at Qing Ming and said with interest, "Boy, are you willing to come out?" Qing Ming said nothing. Shiraishi Kuroto's smile was restrained. He raised the short blade in his hand slightly and said, "Boy, are you ready to face death?" As he spoke, he exuded a strong murderous intent. Those who are not strong in their hearts may give up resisting if they face this murderous intent. But who is Qing Ming? He has long been determined to transcend this world, and his ambitions are long since unlimited to one village and one country. He would not be so easily influenced by him. It would be almost the same to change Orochimaru. Seeing that Qing Ming was still calm, Shiraishi Kuroto finally put away his contempt and regarded Qing Ming as an opponent who needed to be taken seriously. The wind is still rustling. One of them stood on the branch of the tree and the other stood next to the trunk. They were not far apart, but no one spoke or took action. They just looked at each other like this, as if they were about to look at each other until dawn. Suddenly, a leaf fell, blocking Qing Ming's vision at some point. The next moment, a fierce wind came from the side, and Qing Ming Xiang squatted down without thinking. The short blade cut through the air above Qing Ming's head. The Beishikongdu shot down and immediately slashed his hands, slashing at Qing Ming's right neck obliquely. The sharp breath emitted from the short blade made Qing Ming's cheeks hurt. At the critical moment, Qing Ming raised his right arm and used the kunai in his hand to hold up Shiraishi Kurato's short blade. But at this moment, Shiraishi Kurato smiled with a conspiracy. Seeing this, Qing Ming's heart was inexplicably tightened and he immediately wanted to distance himself. But it was too late. A sizzling electric current sounded. A ray of lightning suddenly appeared, and a dazzling blue lightning burst out from Shiraishi Kurato's palm, along the short blade, and reached the top of Kuwu. Qing Ming's right hand numb, and with a clang of bitterness, he fell to the ground. Shiraishi Kurato took the opportunity to swing the short blade in his hand. Even though Qing Ming tried his best to dodge, the short blade still cut his chest. The severe pain made Qing Ming couldn't help but let out a muffled groan. Then, a smell of flesh and blood burning came. No need to look at it, Qing Ming also knew that the wound on his chest was scorched by the thunder chakra attached to the short blade of Shiraishikura. The only thing that is thankful is that in a short period of time, he doesn't have to worry about losing too much blood and dying. Is this Shiraishi Kurato's kindness? Of course the answer is no. Although the thunder escape chakra attached to the short blade helped him stop the bleeding, it also caused his body to fall into a temporary state of paralysis. At this time, Qing Ming didn't care about hiding, and with a thought, he opened the Sharingan. In just a moment, his pupils changed from black to blood red, and a pitch-black magma spiraled wildly in it. There is no time to make seals, Qing Ming directly activates the Sharingan's hypnosis ability. The moment the two looked at each other, Shiraishi Kurato's eyes went from being unbelievable to being confused. Qing Ming knew that this kind of control was unstable. So, he kicked the ground with his feet and quickly retreated. At the same time, he flipped his palms and took out several shurikens from his ninja bag and threw them out with force. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 44, Full Firepower. Swish 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 swish. The shuriken cut through the air and made a slight sound. He was about to hit Shiraishi Kurato, but he suddenly woke up. I have to say that as a special ninja who is good at melee combat, Shiraishi Kurato has really high combat qualities. The moment he woke up, he made the most correct choice, flashing and blocking most of the shurikens. Only some scratches in my left arm. However, this injury was not taken seriously by Shiraishi Kurato. He is staring at Qing Ming straight now, and his eyes are shocked. Looking at the pupils, Shiraishi Kurato was both excited and afraid. The excitement is because there are high rewards for Sharingan, whether on the black market or in the village. As long as he kills Qing Ming and hands his body over, he will immediately get a lot of money. Ninjas are not saints without desires. Few people will not be moved by such a large amount of money. Moreover, killing such a genius also made Shiraishi Kurato feel inexplicable sense of accomplishment. As for fear, that is naturally the reputation of the Uchiha clan. 1-on-1, you must escape. 2-on-1, attack the rear. This sentence is not just a joke. Unfortunately, he is facing a 1-on-1 situation now. Therefore, Shiraishi Kurato felt instinctive fear in his heart. However, when he saw Qing Ming's young and tender face, the fear in his heart unconsciously disappeared a little. Not to mention, Shiraishi Kurato's eyes moved downward, and the hideous scars on Qing Ming's chest were clearly visible. Although the wound has been calcined due to the high temperature of lightning strike and no longer bleeding, the damage suffered by Qing Ming is real. This made Shiraishi Kurato feel a little more confident. And just as Shiraishi Kurato was observing Qing Ming was also observing the other party. I have to admit that he made a mistake this time. He never expected that the other party would develop a second chakra attribute. When he fought with Iwahiko Shizumi, he also took the time to observe the battle between the Shangnan. Although he didn't pay much attention to Shiraishikura, he remembered that he used his earth escape. So, he instinctively believed that the other party had a chakra attribute and had never considered the possibility that the other party would perform other types of ninjutsu. Although he knew that ninjas had reached the level of the upper ninja, he would start to develop the second attribute. However, subconsciously, he did not think that the special Supreme Ninja is the real Supreme Ninja, but just regarded it as an enhanced version of the Central Ninja. So, I ignored this possibility and suffered a big loss. However, it was also his unlucky. Shiraishi Kurato hidden thunder attribute chakra is probably for the purpose of underestimating their side. As a result, he accidentally killed the middle and lower king, which attracted the opponent's target, and then he blocked the disaster for several upper king. This also made Qing Ming understand one truth, that is, before his strength reaches a certain level, he must not be able to do anything. Otherwise, any small mistake may lose your life. Feeling most of the numbness in the body, Qing Ming no longer wasted time, he immediately raised his hands and was about to make seals. Seeing this scene, Shiraishi Kuroto immediately looked away. He knew the danger of the Sharingan, so he did not dare to look at him when Qing Ming made a seal, for fear of being illusioned. Unfortunately, Qing Ming's illusion level is too low now, and the Sharingan's evolution level is not high, so he cannot do what Uchiha Itachi can perform illusion just by raising his hands and feet. Otherwise, if Shiraishi Kuroto looked at him so unscrupulously just now, it would be a behavior of seeking death. Fire escaped the art of the great fireball. Shiraishi Kuroto just looked away when a huge fireball flew towards him. Shiraishi Kuroto dared not resist and quickly dodged to one side. However, before he could stand firm, a kunai shot from the front. Shiraishi Kuroto originally wanted to swing his sword to block it, but when he saw the burning detonation talisman of Kawashang, his face immediately changed and he jumped straight backward. Boom! The detonation talisman exploded and failed to injure Shiraishi Kuroto. Qing Ming was unreasonable and went straight to another tree with a moment of body technique, then quickly completed the seal and used the fire escape phoenix immortal fire technique. The magma in Qing Ming's blood-colored pupils rotated rapidly, and the Sharingan's insight ability was activated to the limit. Balls of flames like seeds of imitations flew out of his mouth, just like they were installed in navigation. Each of them accurately hit the place where Shiraishi Kwangdu was about to settle, forcing him to be embarrassed. However, Shiraishi Kuroto was worthy of his special reputation as a ninja. He was targeted by Qing Ming and did not suffer too serious injuries. If it were the previous Iwai Zongnan, even if it was not dead, it would have to peel off. How could it be like Shiraishi Kuroto now? There were only some traces of burning by flames on his body. Cough cough. Shiraishi Kuroto coughed lightly, endured the burning sensation on his body, swept to where Qing Ming was, and muttered, "Is it over?" End. Ha ha. Qing Ming sneered and appeared on another big tree, made seals again, and performed ninjutsu. Fire escape phoenix immortal fire art. There were dozens or hundreds of flames being spit out by Qing Ming, and it hit Shiraishi Kangbu as if it was a tracking missile. At this moment, Qing Ming was like a naughty green man, not caring about the consumption of chakra at all, just to use ninjutsu to kill the other party. After several consecutive times, Shiraishi Kuroto couldn't bear it anymore and launched a counterattack. It's not that Shiraishi Kangdu was not patient and spent it with Qing Ming, but as time went by, his dodging movements were gradually seen through Qing Ming. This caused him to be under increasing pressure. Shiraishi Kuroto was afraid that if this continued, he would lose the opportunity to fight back. So, after avoiding Qing Ming's attack again, before Qing Ming took action again, he walked out from behind the hiding tree, used the momentum body technique, and leaned towards Qing Ming at an extremely fast speed. Perhaps before opening the Sharingan, the other party's move could catch him off guard. But now, before the other party could get closer, Qing Ming had already used the momentum body technique to distance himself from him. Shiraishi Kuroto wanted to continue chasing, but the three kunai shot suddenly, accurately stuck to his pursuit, making him extremely uncomfortable. Fire escape phoenix immortal fire art. After using Kyuubi to stop the opponent from approaching, Qing Ming used this technique again. Seeing the familiar fireball reappearing, Shiraishi Kuroto quickly stopped, focused and prepared to dodge. But at this moment, several shurikens that were burned red suddenly flew out of the flames and attacked the vital points of his body first. Shiraishi Kuroto was caught off guard, his expression suddenly changed, and he quickly swung his sword to block it. However, the shuriken was blocked all, but the flames created by the Phoenix Immortal Fire technique had no time to dodge. Boom! A ball of flame hit him, smashing him backwards. Cough cough cough. Shiraishi Kuroto covered his charred chest and coughed violently. During this period, he struggled to stand up, but tried several times but failed. Chapter 45 Summary. Brush. Qing Ming's figure appeared in the scene. Then, he threw out a kunai and rushed towards the struggle of Shiraishikura. Kuwu quickly flew through a distance of 7 or 8 meters, and was about to hit the other party. But at this moment, Shiraishi Kuroto suddenly raised his head and showed a grim smile. Then, the whole person turned into a lightning bolt and approached Qing Ming at an extremely fast speed. This state, not as weak as he had just shown. Obviously, Shiraishi Kuroto was acting just now. However, facing the sudden rise of Shiraishi Kuroto, Qing Ming did not show the panic he deserved. He seemed to have expected it, and at the moment when the other party started attacking, the person had already retreated. Not only that, his hands were still rapidly forming seals during the retreat. Magic, the art of shackles. Qing Ming thought and performed this technique before Shiraishi Kangdo approached. Looking at the huge Sharingan gradually occupying the entire field of vision, Shiraishi Kuroto murmured, "It's not a ninjutsu." Obviously, he thought Qing Ming was also using ninjutsu this time, but the result was an illusion that he had never used. The next moment, his spiritual will was withdrawn, as if he had entered a illusory scene. Although he could still feel his body, he could not move at all. Looking down, I saw several meter-long rusty iron nails piercing through his limbs and chest and abdomen. Even though he knew that the scene in front of him was fake, the pain that penetrated his bone marrow still made him unable to help but twitch the corners of his mouth. At the same time, outside, Qing Ming looked at the short blade that gradually dissipated in the lightning, breathing a long sigh. At this moment, a figure appeared behind him and attacked him from behind at a speed that was not as weak as Shiraishi Kurato's sprint just now. It seems that he wants to kill him with one blow when he is relaxed. But has Qing Ming really relaxed? Just as he saw that when the person came to show up, Qing Ming seemed to have already realized something, he flashed and hid behind Shiraishi Kurato. Looking at the figure that was approaching quickly in front of him, Qing Ming sneered, "You finally appeared." After saying that, he immediately retreated. Seeing this, Shiraishi Kurato, no, to be precise, Shiraishi Kurato's shadow clone changed his expression and he had to step forward to remove the illusion for the body. But at this moment, a ignition light suddenly appeared on the back of Shiraishi Kangdog, and it was a burning detonation talisman. Boom! A violent explosion sounded. The red flame instantly swallowed Shiraishi Kurato and his shadow clone, and the bright flames dispelled the darkness around them a little. It was not until this time that Qing Ming truly felt relieved and began to breathe heavily. He won this battle seemed simple, but in fact he relied on the convenience of the Sharingan. If it weren't for the Sharingan's hypnosis ability, he would have been killed by Shiraishi Kurato's serial attacks after being hit by the initial mistake. It can be seen that Shiraishi Kurato should have wanted to fight quickly at that time. Unfortunately, because he opened the Sharingan early, he escaped. If this is the case, then he can only survive under the pursuit of the other party. However, in addition to his hypnotic ability, Sharingan also gave him powerful insight. In this way, he could see through Shiraishi Kurato's movements and put the skills of the three-door fire escape ninjutsu and the ninju throw to the limit. Otherwise, even if he has practiced the three fire escape ninja technique to LV2 and upgraded the ninja tool throw to LV3, he may not be able to do anything to the other party. Once his attack cannot threaten the other party can completely waste time with him and exhaust his chakra. By then, there is only one way to die. Fortunately, the Sharingan is powerful enough to force the other party to take the initiative to launch a counterattack. However, Shiraishi Kurato's counterattack was not just a random fight, but had his own plans. First of all, at the beginning of the counterattack, when he walked out from behind the big tree, he had already used the Shadow Clan art in advance and secretly separated a shadow clone. Then, he took the initiative to attack him with his own bait, trying to attract all his attention and create opportunities for the shadow clone. However, his strength was obviously beyond the other party's expectations. The combination of Fire Escape Phoenix Immortal Fire Technique and Ninja Tool Throwing, which caught the other party off guard. At this point, the development of things gradually exceeded Shiraishi Kurato's control. But the arrow was on the string and had to be fired. So, after being hit by the Phoenix Immortal Fire Technique, Shiraishi Kurato pretended to be seriously injured, attracting Qing Ming to appear. Although Qing Ming saw the clues, he still showed his figure. At this time, both of them have their own abacus. Shiraishi Kurato wanted to attack the shadow clone forward and back to kill Qing Ming. Qing Ming wanted to use his tricks and defeat the opponent in one fell swoop. This is not to say how amazing he is, but after the other party first used the Shadow Clan art, he was mentally prepared accordingly. Although the Sharingan cannot directly see the chakra meridians and acupoints of the human body, the amount of chakra can be roughly seen clearly. Therefore, although he did not see the process of the other party performing the shadow cloning technique, he could see clearly that the strange situation in his body was suddenly reduced by half. In this way, if he can't guess anything, he will be wasting his eyes. And with mental preparation, he was not too surprised whether it was Shiraishi Kurato's final attack or the sudden appearance of his shadow clone. I can only say that the saying circulating in the ninja world is correct. One-on-one, Sharingan is really too advantageous. From the beginning, he guessed Shiraishi Kurato's trump card, and it would be strange if he could win in the end. Taking a deep breath, I felt the pain in my chest relieved a little. Qing Ming no longer thought about it, but instead opened the panel and glanced. After a battle, his only remaining chakra was consumed. Not all of this is consumed by using ninjutsu, but a considerable part of it is consumed by activating the Sharingan. Although it only takes a little chakra per minute to turn on the Sharingan, the consumed chakra will rise sharply in the event of fierce battles. Just like just now, hundreds of chakra were consumed in just a few minutes. However, there is also good news, that is, the evolution of his Sharingan has increased by 10 points. This allowed Qing Ming to see a shortcut to improve the evolution of Sharingan. But Qing thought about it and gave up. He doesn't want to walk around at a critical moment of life and death. With the proficiency panel, he has no need to take such a risk, even if this is a shortcut. Looking at the flames gradually extinguished in front of him, Qing Ming covered his chest and stepped forward, picked up the short blade on the ground, and then left the place. Next, he planned to find a place to cat and wait quietly for the end of this strange raid. As for the battlefield, whoever loves to go will go. He has done enough. Whether he dies or lives depends on their luck. Moreover, even if he wants to go to the battlefield, his body will not allow it. Not to mention the almost exhausted chakra, the injury on his chest alone makes him unable to exert much strength. In this case, if you still have to participate in the war, that is, Chunchun is seeking death. Qing Ming has no intention of sacrificing himself for others. Chapter 46 Return. In a flash, several hours passed. Qing Ming was originally worried that another enemy would come after him, but as the sky was about to dawn, he did not see a second person, which made his tense spirit slightly relax. If the enemy has the advantage, it is impossible to ignore Shiraishi Kurato's life or death, so it is highly likely that he will win on his own. Next, he just needs to wait for rescue with peace of mind. As for returning by yourself, Qing thought about it, but still gave up. After all, his victory was only his guess. If the enemy could not take care of this for the time being because of the intense battle situation, wouldn't he fall into the trap when he went back? So, please wait patiently. And this wait took 2 hours. 2 hours later. It was bright. In the forest. 4 Konoha ninjas are moving rapidly. Suddenly, the leader of the leader stopped his steps, threw out a kunai, and shouted, "Who?" Hearing this, the 3 Konoha shinen immediately dispersed and formed a defensive formation. Ding! Kyuwu was intercepted in the air. Qing Ming walked out from behind the tree. Seeing his outfit, a Konoha shinen who was facing him said in surprise, "Konoha ninja." Qing Ming nodded. Seeing this, the leader of the Shangren still did not relax his vigilance, but asked, "Who are you? Why did you appear here?" Qing Ming heard this and told his identity and experiences last night. After listening to his narrative, the leader Shangren looked at the scars on his chest, thought for a while, and took him back to the temporary station. About an hour later, Furukawa appeared in the temporary garrison. After verifying his true self, Qing Ming was taken back to the base camp. From the other party's mouth, Qing Ming finally understood the whole story. At first, he felt that Iwanen's raid this time was unreasonable. Their previous defense zone did not have any important facilities, so it was not very meaningful to fight and could not be defended. It was completely thankless to attack here. Now, Qing Ming knows it's not meaningless. Because last night, more than one of their defense zones were raided, several defense zones adjacent to them, as well as several defense zones on the other side of the base camp, were also raided. Moreover, it is not only Iwa Ninja, but also Sand Ninja. The 2 villages had reached some agreements, but they launched a raid on Konoha base camp at the same time. That's right, it's the base camp. The ninjas attacking their peripheral defense zones can only be considered as feint attacks. The real main force actually waited for a while before launching the attack. Last night, after receiving signals from all parties for help, the base camp immediately sent several troops to provide reinforcements. However, shortly after the team set off, the main players of Iwa Nin and Sa Ninja appeared and headed straight to the base camp from both east and west. These main forces are not the mobs that Qing Ming and others encountered. When they were in the game, the defense zones on both sides of the east and west could not hold on at all. In just a short time, it was broken through. Seeing that the enemy was about to arrive at the base camp, Orochimaru had no choice but to order the support troops to return. So, just as Qing Ming and others were struggling to support, an extremely tragic battle also occurred at the base camp. Needless to say, Konoha finally saved the base camp. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to see Furukawa now. But, Qing Ming glanced at Guchuin's empty right arm, and couldn't help but sigh at the danger of the battlefield. That's right, Furukawa lost an arm in the battle last night, and his usual right hand, which undoubtedly reduced his strength a lot. But this is the best result. Last night, only he and one special ninja survived. The team leader, Hiroshi Nakajima and another special ninja, all died in the battle. In addition, there was only one Zongren who died. Although Ryosuke and Shizuko Mizutani suffered considerable injuries, they were lucky enough to support Okura Seikun. Yes, although the base camp could not provide timely support, Okura Seiya, the Shanjini who stayed at the garrison, provided support. It is precisely because of this that Ryosuke and others survived. Originally, Furukawa thought Qing Ming was dead, but suddenly heard about him. At first, he thought someone was pretending. After all, he hadn't appeared for so long. When he left the battlefield, he was chased by a special ninja again. It was normal for him to die. But no one expected that Qing Ming would survive and even kill the enemy. This made Fukugawa very pleased. As for the killing process, Qing Ming emphasized the enemy's contempt for him and his caution. Anyway, no one has seen Shiraishi Kurato burst out with all his strength, and he is not up to him to decide the specific combat power. Even if someone guessed that there might be some problems here, as long as he refused to admit it, would there be someone who would stand up for the enemy Shiraishi Kurato? After a while, his strength has improved, and this problem is no longer a problem. Back to the base camp. Qing Ming first went to see Ryosuke and Shizuko Mizutani. When the two saw him, they could almost describe it as crying with joy. Qing Ming saw that they were fine, and he showed a rare smile. After the three of them talked for a while, Qing Ming went to the medical team to deal with the injuries on his body. Other skin trauma are nothing, but the injuries on the chest must be treated as soon as possible. Although the high temperature carried by lightning has made his wound koken no longer bleed, if not treated carefully, it is very likely that he will leave sequelae. Qing Ming didn't want to cough for a while when he took 2 steps like the moonlight and storm. Speaking of the moonlight and wind, Qing Ming thought of the 3 suns and moon dance. Last night's battle made Qing Ming understand that in terms of ranged attacks, his ninjutsu was temporarily enough. Next, just keep improving their levels. On the contrary, in close combat, the basic physical skills were obviously not enough, and he must learn more advanced techniques as soon as possible. Of course, he didn't want to learn the 3 suns and moon dance. When using this secret skill, you must first use the Shadow Clan art to summon 2 shadow clones, and then the clone and the body quickly enter the enemy in front of the enemy, and finally attack the enemy's vital points from the top, left and right directions. From this process, we can see that this move consumes a lot of chakra and emphasizes one-hit killing, which is only suitable for ninjas like Moonlight and Rising, who specializes in sneak attacks and assassinations. Qing Ming's goal is to become a hexagonal warrior, not an assassin, so this trick is not suitable. What he wanted to learn was his pre-sword technique, Konoha flow sword technique. Although this technique is not widely circulated among Konoha ninjas, there are indeed a few people who know it. Like Wanian Shinen Marusen Kusuk, Konoha Kanon Bayunye Mountain, they all know this technique, and they have also developed their own secret techniques on it. Qing Ming felt that if he learned this technique and then brushed his proficiency, he should be able to develop his unique sword move. Of course, none of these are the most important. The most important thing is that it is circulated relatively widely, and the village card is not that strict. Basically, as long as the merits are enough, it can be redeemed. The relatively low difficulty of obtaining is the main reason why Qing Ming attacked it. While walking, Qing Ming calculated the battlefield merits he had saved in the past month, which was almost enough. Qing Ming planned to deal with the injury, so he went to the logistics department to exchange for this technique. Chapter 47 Gain. 3 days later. Early in the morning. Qing Ming walked out of the tent and walked through the base camp. Looking at the crowd coming and going, he felt a sense of depression that was about to come. Qing Ming knows where this feeling comes from. With Orochimaru's nature, it is absolutely impossible to just be beaten and not fight back. The canyon was ambushed once, and the sneak attack 3 days ago was another. I suffered 2 losses in succession. It was impossible for Orochimaru to go back without revenge. He had reason to suspect that the other party was holding up a big move. But, Qing Ming glanced at the smoke and fire traces around him, knowing that even if he wanted to take revenge, it would not be a matter in a short time. 3 days ago, the joint raid between Sandnin and Iwaninin. Although Konoha blocked it, more than half of the supplies in the base camp were burned down. Therefore, it is unlikely that Orochimaru will make 2 big moves before the new supplies arrive. At the speed of their arrival at the battlefield of Rain Country a month ago, it took at least 20 days to deliver supplies from Konoha to here. This is not the time to raise materials. If someone makes trouble during the transportation of materials, the time will be delayed even longer. Qing Ming estimated that it would be impossible to handle it without a month of effort. In other words, there is a high probability that there will be no large-scale battle in the next month. This made him feel a little relaxed. Leaving the base camp and passing through several lines of defense, Qing Ming came to a dense forest located on the northwest side of the base camp. As soon as he approached here, he heard a few shouts of pounding tree stumps, and there was a jingle of weapons colliding further away. Qing Ming is no longer surprised by this. This is the venue allocated by the base camp for ninja practice, and it is normal for some people to practice here. Even during war, ninjas cannot perform tasks all year round. Basically, every 10 or half a month, they will get a few days of rest. Under pressure on the battlefield, many ninjas will choose to practice during this period of time to improve their own strength. In order to facilitate management, the base camp specially allocated this area. After more than a month after coming to the battlefield, Qing Ming would come over if he had time, especially in the past 3 days, he would come here to practice every day. Quickly walked to an uninhabited corner, Qing Ming drew out a short sword. This short sword was seized by him from Shiraishi Karato. The sword was about half a meter long, the sword body was silver white, and the whole body was made of mixed with some chakra conduction metal. It is not only strong and durable, but also has excellent energy transmission efficiency. Unfortunately, Qing Ming's fire escape ninjutsu is not of high level, and his understanding of fire attribute chakra is too shallow. He has failed to complete the morphological changes and nature changes of the corresponding attribute chakra, and cannot exert the full power of this short blade. Otherwise, if he moves the fire knife, the enemy will not only suffer physical damage, but also have to withstand the high temperature burns of the flames. Shaking his head and temporarily putting these ideas behind his mind, Qing Ming began to practice the koi flow sword technique. That's right, Qing Ming has exchanged for the koi flow sword technique. The process went very smoothly and nothing happened. During the practice, Qing Ming discovered that the perfection of the basic physical technique actually gave it a bonus. In just less than 3 days, his Koba flow sword technique was already in the beginning, and even reached the level of LV1 6200s. According to Qing Ming's estimate, the difficulty of learning koi flow sword technique should be at level C. Even if you don't need to consume too much chakra during practice, it will take at least 3 days to get started. Comparing the two, this is not a little faster. As for the reason, Qing Ming has roughly figured out that many of the techniques in the basic body technique were actually included in the koi flow sword technique. In this way, the perfection of the basic physical technique is equivalent to learning some of the contents of the Koba flow sword technique in advance. So, the progress is so fast. However, Qing Ming estimated that this gain effect is also limited, and it is impossible to assist the growth of koi flow sword technique. After all, there are only so many things that basic physical techniques contain. When these foundations are consumed, they will naturally be useless. The development of things was similar to what he expected. 2 days later, morning, when Qing Ming completed the practice of koi flow sword technique, again, his proficiency only increased a little. At the same time, on his panel, the basic body technique in the skill bar suddenly disappeared after a flash. At first, Qing Ming was worried for a while, but after confirming that the relevant knowledge was still in his mind, he felt relieved. It is obvious that the basic body technique was completely absorbed by the Koba flow sword technique. At this time, his koi flow sword technique was LV1 181 200ths. Now that he is about to advance, Qing Ming will naturally not waste his time. Just a little rest, he will start a new round of cultivation. However, without the gain buff of the basic body technique, the cultivation speed inevitably slowed down. It was not until half-afternoon that he finally put the koi flow sword technique to LV2 1/500th. Although Qing Ming was not a master of swordsmanship at this moment, he was quite good at playing the short blade in his hand. After playing for a while, Qing Ming put down the short blade in his hand and began to look back at the entire process of the liver's koi flow sword technique in the past few days. It can be clear that his koi flow sword technique can be improved so quickly. It is absolutely inseparable from the basic physical technique that has already reached a complete level. From this, Qing Ming couldn't help but think of the situation when he first learned the Fire Escape Phoenix Immortal Fire art. At that time, it was precisely because he had already reached the LV1 of the Fire Escape High Fireball technique that he quickly got into the Fire Escape Phoenix Immortal Fire technique. Even the Fire Escape Dragon Fire art learned later is because the Fire Escape High Fireball art and Fire Escape Phoenix Immortal Fire art were introduced one after another so that we could accumulate proficiency at a faster speed. At that time, he discovered a rule that ninjutsu of the same attributes can promote each other to a certain extent. But after all 3 ninjutsu have been upgraded to LV1, the effect will not be obvious, or it will be almost non-existent. So, he didn't continue to delve into it. Now, Qing Ming found that he was wrong. He should not be able to upgrade the level of the 3 fire escape ninjutsu at the same time. Because they are both C-level ninjutsu, their proficiency is not much different, and they have little meaning to learn from each other. Therefore, proficiency can only increase little by little. The correct way to do this should be to first improve the level of a ninjutsu, so as to master the advanced usage of the corresponding attribute chakra, and then learn other related ninjutsu. In this way, it is equivalent to senior students doing test questions in lower grades, and the process will naturally be much easier. Reflecting on the panel means that proficiency increases exponentially. In this way, it can not only save time, but also save chakra. This made Qing Ming regret not thinking about this earlier. Fortunately, everything is not too late. Qing Ming opened the panel and glanced, and finally decided to take the lead in improving the level of Fire Escape Phoenix Immortal Fire technique among the 3 Fire Escape ninjutsu. The reason for choosing this is very simple, it is the most practical. As for other skills, the correlation is not very important, just improve step by step. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 48 Rotation. Time passes by like a flash of time. In a blink of an eye, another week has passed. After these days of cultivation, Qing Ming's chest injuries have been healed, and Ryosuke and Shizuko Mizutani's bodies have also returned to normal. Qing Ming has received the order that from tomorrow, their 17th squad will be carrying out tasks normally. In other words, today is the last day of his free practice. Under the shade of the trees, Qing Ming opened his eyes, felt the chakra in his body become full again, nodded with satisfaction, and then silently said, "Panel." The next moment, the familiar light blue light curtain appeared in his sight. Name: Uchiha Aomi. Age: 11 years old. Physical constitution: 7. Spirit: 9. Chakra: 3510, 5026 right pointing arrow 5027. Bloodline. Sharingan single Gochu 112 1000ths right pointing arrow 160 1000ths. Skill. Chakra refining. LV3 664 1000ths right pointing arrow LV3 762 1000ths. Fire escape the art of the great fireball. LV2 11 500ths right pointing arrow LV2 21 500ths. Fire escape phoenix immortal fire art. LV2 7 500ths right pointing arrow LV2 101 500ths. Fire escape dragon fire technique. LV2 2 500ths right pointing arrow LV2 10 500ths. Magic the art of shackles. LV1 105 200ths right pointing arrow LV1 110 200ths. Instant body technique. LV2 234 500ths right pointing arrow LV2 375 500ths. Shadow clone technique. LV0 5 100ths. Koba flying skill. LV2 1 500th right pointing arrow LV2 315 500ths. The art of reflecting the heart. LV4 6 2000ths right pointing arrow LV4 186 2000ths. Throwing tools. LV3 210 1000ths right pointing arrow LV3 570 1000ths. Chakra control. LV3 131 1000ths right pointing arrow LV3 150 1000ths. 3 body techniques. LV3 0 over 0. It can be seen that in the past week, his koi flow sword technique has improved a lot, and his proficiency has changed from LV2 1 500th to LV2 315 500ths. Now, Qing Ming is confident that he can suppress the 2 Yenian Zongnan who surrounded him and killed him more than 10 days ago with just sword skills. If his koi flow sword technique can be promoted to LV3, and he can even kill them forcibly. Unfortunately, history cannot be repeated. Moreover, the 2 of them have been killed by him. Shadowed his head secretly, Qing Ming turned his gaze to the nonsense. It can be seen that in just over 10 days, his proficiency increased by 360 points, which is undoubtedly very fast at the LV3 level. And the reason for this is very simple, that is, he secretly turned on the Sharingan for assistance. Although he doesn't want the Sharingan to be exposed to people prematurely, he will not give up on his food because of choking. As long as the risk is determined to be controllable, Qing Ming doesn't mind using it. The increase in the proficiency of forbearing equipment also gave him a deeper understanding of this skill. Although it could not reach the level of qualitative change, the threat to the enemy was undoubtedly a bit greater. The growth of strength is accumulated bit by bit. Retracting his gaze, Qing Ming looked at the bloodline column. He has been open to his eyes for 2 months, and he has only accumulated a total of 160 points of proficiency. Even if he is patient, he is a little anxious now. In order to speed up the evolution of Sharingan, in the past 12 days of cultivation, he devoted almost 2/3 of his chakra to the practice of spiritual of heart reflection. But even so, it has not increased the evolutionary speed of Sharingan much. According to the current progress, Qing Ming estimated that it would take at least 10 months before Sharingan evolved to the second Guyu. Although this time was 1/3 shorter than the first year and 4 months, it was still a bit long, and Qing Ming couldn't wait for so long. Fortunately, his chakra refining technique is about to be upgraded. Now, his proficiency is LV3 762 1000ths. If the next task is not so heavy and he can squeeze out 8 hours of practice every day, then Qing Ming will be able to pull his liver to LV4 in just 1 month. By then, the amount of chakra he can use every day will increase. In this way, he can use more chakra to practice the spirit of heart reflection, to speed up the evolution of the Sharingan. In addition, his soul reflecting art is only LV4, and every 5 points of proficiency can improve the evolution of Sharingan a little. But when it is promoted to LV5, the effect will inevitably be improved. At that time, his Sharingan had almost half of its evolution. In other words, the evolution speed will be further improved in the next half. Qing Ming roughly calculated that in just about 4 or 5 months, his Sharingan could evolve from a single Guju to a double Guju. Although this time is still not short, it is much less than 1 year, 4 months and 10 months. After thinking about this clearly, Qing Ming breathed a sigh of relief, and his originally slightly anxious heart gradually calmed down. Close the panel, Qing Ming no longer wastes time and continues to start his practice today. Ding ding, dang dang. The country of rain. Northeast. On a field path, hundreds of fully armed Konoha ninjas were escorting more than a dozen trucks of supplies and moving forward slowly. And Qing Ming is one of these more than 100 ninjas. But his face was not very good looking. There is no way. He originally hoped to receive a relatively leisurely task, to use the chakra refining technique, to LV4, and to speed up the evolution of the Sharingan. As a result, the base camp directly sent them to the front line and went to a certain stronghold to change their posts. Please. This is the front line. The risk level of the task is no less than lurking and infiltration. Because they are far away from the base camp, they will inevitably not be able to receive timely and effective support, so when they encounter danger, they can only bear it themselves. Generally, it's okay to be dangerous, but whether you die or live depends on your own strength. But if you encounter the danger of force majeure, it will be called daily responsive, and daily no longer works, and it may end up with a group of people being destroyed. The risks involved can be imagined. For a moment, Qing Ming wanted to leave. But considering his own strength, he finally gave up this dangerous idea. After all, it's great to enjoy the cool under the big tree. It is better not to go solo before your strength reaches the level of the movie. The dangers in the ninja world are not only as simple as it appears. If you walk outside and get humble, you will have no place to cry. So, it's better to be more stable. Now, Qing Ming only hopes that the stronghold he goes to is not that important. In this way, as long as he is more careful, it should be no problem to spend a month's rotation period safely. Of course, if he really encounters danger beyond his tolerance, he will run away decisively. Qing Ming would not sacrifice himself for Konoha. Time passes by minute by minute. In a blink of an eye, 3 days have passed. Qing Ming's worried halfway ambush did not happen, and they arrived at their destination successfully. This is a small town with ruins and broken walls everywhere, and the road surface is also bumpy, and traces left by the earth escape ninjutsu can be seen vaguely. As for people, except for the Konoha ninja who came to pick them up, there was no one else. Except for those who escaped at the beginning of the war, most of the remaining residents in the town turned into corpses. Walking on the street, Qing Ming could clearly smell the rotten corpses in the collapsed houses on both sides. As the saying goes, when gods fight, mortals suffer. Most of these corpses buried in the buildings on both sides were affected by the battle between ninjas, and they were suffering from unintentional disasters. In the ninja war, it has never affected only ninjas, but also thousands of ordinary people. Opening parenthesis. Chapter 49 Unexpected Joy. Ding ding dang dang. The town's stronghold, about 2 kilometers southwest, in a dense forest, Qing Ming held a short blade and fought with Furukawa. Koshi and the dagger kept colliding, making crisp attacks one after another, and the two of them were fighting back and forth, very fierce. This is the 11th day they have come to perform the rotation task. In the past 10 days, none of them encountered too much danger. They fought with the enemy several times, and they were all small fights and could not get on the table. Qing Ming could clearly feel that further north, the ninjas in the Iwa hidden village stronghold confronted them were very restrained. Even, it can be described as coward. These people are not entangled with them at all, and they mostly perform tasks based on surveillance. As long as they are discovered, they will evacuate immediately. The reason for this is that Qing Ming estimated that the other party should be worried about Konoha's revenge. After all, Konoha will definitely fight back if she causes trouble twice. In this case, their main energy should be to prevent Konoha's surprise attack, so the front line is so restrained. Qing Ming is happy to see this. What's the point of fighting a life and death? If you have this time and energy, it's better to practice hard. Just like now, under the training of Furukawa, his koi flow sword technique has made rapid progress and is about to break through LV2. After another 10 minutes, Fukukawa stopped the attack, put away Kuwu, retreated and opened the distance, looked at Qing Ming, and said, "Okay, let's get here today. Thank you for your guidance from the teacher." Qing Ming heard this and bowed slightly to thank him. Furukawa nodded and continued, "Your swordsmanship has almost reached the limit of the current stage. If you want to break through the current bottleneck, you still need to carefully polish it for a while." Hearing this, Qing Ming opened the panel and glanced at it. Kanahali Flow Sword Technique. LV2 497 500ths. In this case, just practice it carefully a few times and accumulate 3 points of proficiency, and his Koba Flow Sword Technique can break through the current limit and reach the level of LV3. Bottleneck. Single quote. It doesn't exist. Single quote. However, although he thought so in his heart, Qing Ming did not show it on his face, but responded in agreement, "Yes, teacher, I understand." After saying that, he started practicing by himself. On the side, Ryosuke and Shizuko Mizutani were planning to take a rest for a while, but after seeing Qing Ming working so hard, they stopped resting. They immediately stood up and continued their practice. Seeing this scene, Furukawa smiled and said nothing. He knew that Ryosuke and Shizuko Mizutani had the talents of him. Although he was better than ordinary people, he definitely couldn't reach the level of genius. But because of Qing Ming's existence, these two people practiced very hard, and their strength was improved at a speed that was no less than that of some genius ninjas. After only more than 4 months of graduation, their strength reached the level of some Zongren. This is the power of role models. 1 hour later. It is approaching evening. Qing Ming, who was practicing swordsmanship, suddenly stopped moving, then he closed his sword and stood up, closed his eyes, and silently felt the changes in his body. Just now, his koi flow sword technique finally accumulated enough proficiency, and he promoted from LV2 497 500ths to LV3 1 1000th. At the same time, a warm current emerged from the depths of his bone marrow, and quickly flowed through his body through blood vessels and meridians, nourishing every cell in his body. Qing Ming is not unfamiliar with this feeling. He felt it once when his basic physical skills increased from LV1 to LV2, which led to the growth of physical attributes. Now, this situation has reappeared, and it is obvious that his physical attributes are about to be improved again. After a moment, the warm current disappeared. Qing Ming opened the panel and glanced. Sure enough, his physique attributes changed from the previous 7 o'clock to the current 8 o'clock. Then, a sense of ease of opening a shackle suddenly arises. Qing Ming can be sure that if the chakra refinement technique is activated at this time, his chakra upper limit will inevitably be improved, which is the result of the physical shackles being broken through and the potential has increased. Originally, Qing Ming thought that he would have to wait until the Sharingan evolved again. Unexpectedly, the Koi-Lu sword technique actually gave him unexpected joy. However, if you think about it, the Koba flow sword technique originally contains the components of body building. Since the basic body technique can guide the body to evolve, there is no reason why the Koba flow sword technique at a higher level cannot do it. Of course, the same sentence is the main force that prompted his physical evolution, which is the foundation he accumulated over his long-term hard practice. Whether it is the basic body technique or the Konoha flow sword technique, it is just an introduction. If you want to continue to improve in the future, you must practice hard. In addition, with this breakthrough, his Sharingan evolution speed should be able to accelerate a little more. However, whether it is as expected will be tested in detail. Just as Qing Ming was thinking, Fukukawa suddenly appeared in the field and said, "Okay, the time is over, it's time for us to go back." Hearing this, Qing Ming and others cleaned up for a while, then followed Fukugawa and returned to the town together. It was night. Inside the room, Qing Ming sat cross-legged, closed his eyes and meditated, and refined chakra. After a long time, Qing Ming opened his eyes and opened the panel to scan. As he expected, with the breakthrough of physical attributes, his physical potential increased again, and the chakra that he could accommodate also rose. For a long time, he saw the rapid growth of the chakra ceiling again. If this is the case, his Sharingan will not be able to accelerate his evolution. Because as long as the amount of chakra he can use does not increase every day, the evolution speed of the Sharingan cannot be improved. Now it depends on whether the physical attributes have changed from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Can the maximum amount of chakra he can use every day exceed the 3,500 point mark? As soon as he thought of this, Qing Ming closed his eyes again. 3 days later, after a series of tests, Qing Ming could confirm that the physical attributes broke from 7 points to 8 points, which really allowed him to break the limit of only 3,500 chakra per day. Now, this number has changed from 3,500 to 4,000. Although it is only a 700-point improvement, it is used in the science of heart reflection, that is 4-point proficiency. And 5 points of proficiency can increase his Sharingan evolution a little. In other words, in the future, his Sharingan will be able to achieve 4 more proficiency every 5 days, which is a significant improvement. And this is just the most direct increase. As his physical attributes improve, the time his body can withstand every day will also increase. In this way, under the same conditions, his chakra refining technique will inevitably be promoted to LV4 at a faster speed. By then, the amount of chakra that can be used every day will further increase, and what follows will be the increase in the evolutionary speed of Sharingan. This is what is called fast one step, fast one step. As long as Qing Ming does his best in every link, he can speed up the evolution of Sharingan to the maximum extent. Chapter 50 Order. Ah! A short scream rang out. Qing Ming pulled out the dagger from Yan Nin's chest in front of him with expressionless expression, completing the final finishing work. Standing up and looking around, you can see that there are many Konoha ninjas doing the same job as him. On the surrounding ground, there were many corpses of ninjas on both sides. Today is the 20th day of his physical attribute breakthrough, and it is also the last day for their group of people to carry out their garrison missions. However, more than 20 kilometers away, the Iwa ninja who was confronting them seemed not going to let them go just like that, and actually launched an attack today. Fortunately, they have the advantage of home court and after paying a certain price, they repelled the invading enemy. As for why they suddenly launched an attack, Qing Ming didn't want to consider this issue. Anyway, they were going back tomorrow. No matter what the other party had plans, it didn't matter to him. After cleaning the battlefield, Qing Ming and a group of Konoha ninjas returned to the town stronghold. As soon as he returned to the stronghold, Furukawa was called to a meeting. Seeing this scene, Qing Ming had an inexplicable premonition in his heart. As it turns out, his premonition is not wrong. In just less than half an hour, Furukawa came back and brought a very bad news. That's tonight. To be precise, in 3 hours, all of them will be divided into 4 teams and launch an attack on the Iwa ninja stronghold more than 20 kilometers away. This order is issued directly by the base camp and they are not allowed to refuse. Moreover, it was not only their stronghold that received the order. Almost all the strongholds on the front line that confronted the Iron Hidden Village received the same order. In other words, this is a full-line attack. Is this Orochimaru's revenge? It's too ridiculous. Single quote. What is the point of this except for both losses? Konoha's troops in the battlefield of the Rain Kingdom are not superior, so this kind of exchange is completely meaningless. Qing Ming was extremely confused. At the same time, I felt a strong sense of malice. He could go back in another day, but suddenly this happened. If the order was not for the front line, all the strongholds that confronted Yan Hidden Village, Qing Ming would have suspected that he or this stronghold had been deliberately targeted. Forget it, there is no goal that must be completed in this mission anyway, so it's better to paddle at that time. Single quote. Thinking of this in my heart, Qing Ming opened the proficiency panel. In the vision, a light blue light curtain quietly emerged. Name: Uchiha Aomi. Age: 11 years old. Physical constitution: 7 right pointing arrow 8. Spirit: 9. Chakra: 3450, 5027 right pointing arrow 6100. Bloodline: Sharingan single Gochu 161 thousandths right pointing arrow 271 1000ths. Skill: Chakra refining, LV3 762 1000ths right pointing arrow LV3 986 1000ths. Fire escape the art of the great fireball, LV2 3500ths. Fire escape Phoenix immortal fire art, LV2 101 500ths right pointing arrow LV3 12 1000ths. Fire escape dragon fire technique, LV2 13 500ths. Magic the art of shackles, LV1 110 200ths right pointing arrow LV2 5 500ths. Instant body technique, LV2 375 500ths right pointing arrow LV3 225 1000ths. Shadow clone technique, LV0 5 100ths. Konoha flow sword technique, LV3 1 1000th right pointing arrow LV3 430 1000ths. The art of reflecting the heart, LV4 186 2000ths right pointing arrow LV4 716 2000ths. Throwing tools, LV3 571 thousandths right pointing arrow LV4 3 2000ths. Chakra control, LV3 181 thousandths. 3 body techniques, LV3 0/0. Originally, Qing Ming was worried that he would not have time to practice after coming to the frontline base. Who would have thought that Iron Nin would be so calm that he would be unexpectedly calm? This gave him a relatively stable cultivation environment. Therefore, in the past month, the skills he has been given a lot of improvements. The first is chakra. 20 days ago, his physical attributes unexpectedly broke through, and his physical shackles were opened. As a result, the upper limit of chakra began to grow. It took about half a month to rise from 5,027 points to 6,100 points. However, after that, I will be stuck. After all, the physical attributes have increased a little, and the potential brought by limited, which is enough for his chakra to grow so much. However, the progress of the chakra refining technique was slightly faster. In just 1 month, it reached LV3 986 1000ths. As long as he is not dead tonight, he will be able to save his liver to LV4 in less than 2 days. By then, whether it is proficiency in other skills or improving the evolution speed of Sharingan, they will all go on the fast lane. Speaking of other skills, it can be seen that in the past 20 days, his proficiency in the Koi flow sword technique has increased a lot, and the progress of LV3 has almost been halfway through. According to Furukawa, his swordsmanship can already be compared with some of the genin. Even if Furukawa himself only competes in melee ability, he will at most tie with Qing Ming. Even if you delay for a longer period of time, Qing Ming still has the possibility of winning. By the way, Furukawa is no longer a one-armed man, and Orochimaru reattached him. Although it is not his own, he can at least make a seal. It was from that time that Qing Ming realized that Furukawa was a member of Orochimaru. Rounding it, he is also considered Orochimaru's faction. Every time I think of this, Qing Ming feels a little fucked. Not to mention how obsessed Orochimaru will have in the future, just being liquidated by the village after the other party defects is a problem. However, Qing Ming just thought about it for a moment and ignored it anymore. With the skilled panel assistance, if he does not have the ability to fight Orochimaru by then, he deserves everything he ends up with. As for the liquidation of the village, by then, his rebellion without Konoha would have already given Sarutobi Hitomi, and he would dare to settle him, and he really thought he had a good temper. Retracting his thoughts, Qing Ming looked at the throwing tool. Thanks to the assistance of Sharingan, his proficiency has exceeded LV3 and reached LV4 2000ths. At this time, he could already play Kumami and Shuriken with the cooperation of the Sharingan. Unfortunately, it is a flying prop after all. Unless the enemy's level is too inferior, it is still difficult to kill the enemy directly. However, it is excellent as an auxiliary means. In addition, LV4 is still not the limit of the skill of non-nest tool throwing, but now it is slower to accumulate proficiency. In addition to the above skills, the skills that have improved significantly in the past month include Fire Escape Phoenix Immortal Fire Art, Magic Jahong Art, and Instant Body Technique. The former has clearly broken through the level of LV2 and reached LV3 12/1000ths. At this time, performing this technique again will not only be faster, but also have more accurate control. Now if you face Shiraishi Kuroto again, Qing Ming will be confident that he will suppress the other party for a long time without opening his eyes. Of course, to do what was happening at the beginning, forcing the other party to fight back, the Sharingan had to predict the other party's position. In addition, he also tried it and took the lead in increasing the level of Fire Escape Phoenix Immortal Fire Technique, and then practiced Fire Escape High Fireball Technique, and Fire Escape Dragon Fire Technique, which can indeed speed up. However, his chakra is currently limited and he does not intend to waste time on these two ninjutsu. When will he upgrade the Fire Escape Phoenix Immortal Fire Technique to LV4, and even after LV5, he will turn around and practice these two ninjutsu, and the speed will be faster. Moreover, with the Koi Flow Sword technique, his demand for ninjutsu has been reduced a lot, and it is only enough to have a Fire Escape Phoenix Immortal Fire Technique. Not to mention, he also has the assistance of Magic Shape Technique and Instant Body Technique. Under Qing Ming's deliberate care, both of his skills were upgraded to level. Among them, the Magic Shadow Technique has been upgraded to LV2, with faster activation speed and stronger control effect on the enemy. The Instant Body Technique has been upgraded to LV3. After activation, the movement speed is about 20% faster than before. Whether it is escape or raid, the effect is better. It is precisely because of these skills that Qing Ming did not resist much raiding the stronghold of the rock-hidden village, otherwise he would not be able to save his life, so he could not care about so much. After all, strength is the foundation of everything. Without strength, any wave can kill you. With strength, even if the tsunami comes, he can remain calm. Chapter 51 Action begins and accidents. It was night. It was light raining in the sky. The surroundings are pitch black. Qing Ming and others followed Fukugawa and sneaked all the way around to a location about 100 meters west of a village. This village is the stronghold of Iwagen. Vaguely, you can see some sporadic lights there. When he arrived at a low slope, Furukawa raised his right fist and signaled everyone to stop. Immediately, everyone stopped and the whole process highlighted a ban on orders. I have to say that the battlefield is about training people. Those who can survive the battle with Iwa Ninja in the past month are not stupid people. At least, no one is independent and does something extraordinary. Furukawa looked at the time and determined that there were more than 10 minutes before the attack was launched, so he made a gesture to let everyone take the time to rest. Seeing this, everyone adjusted their breathing silently to prepare for the upcoming battle. As time passes by minute, the surroundings are quiet. Apart from the subtle breathing of the crowd, there is only the sound of raindrops falling on the ground. It seemed as if I had a premonition that the war was about to break out, and the rain in the sky quietly became heavier. Qing Ming stretched out his hand, felt it for a moment, frowned slightly, and said to himself, this kind of environment is not suitable for the use of fire escape. However, when he touched the short blade on his waist, he felt relieved. There is nothing to say, LV3 431,000s, Koba Flow Sword Technique, gave him enough confidence. Boom. Suddenly, an explosion came from a distance. Qing Ming immediately looked at the sound and saw a red flame suddenly rising from the south of the village ahead, which was the scene when the detonation talisman exploded. Then, there was a tinging sound of metal collisions coming from there. You don't have to think about it and know that there must be a fight there. Someone has been exposed. Single quote. At the first moment, this idea came to Qing Ming's mind. In this mission, they were divided into 4 teams and planned to launch an attack from 4 directions in the village at the same time. Their team is led by Furukawa and is responsible for launching an attack from the west of the village, while the other 3 teams are responsible for the other 3 sides. Judging from the current situation, it is likely that the team in the south has been exposed. Otherwise, if the agreed time has not arrived, they will not launch an attack casually. What Qing Ming can think of, Furukawa can naturally think of it too. Therefore, after thinking for a few seconds, he decisively ordered, the plan has changed, everyone, keep up with me. After saying that, he took the lead and ran towards the Iron Ninja stronghold. Seeing this, Qing Ming and others immediately followed. Obviously, Furukawa planned to launch an attack in advance, and more than one person had similar ideas to him. Just as they quickly approached the Iron Ninja stronghold, an explosion also came from the north. It's good, as long as it's not a single fight. Thinking of this in my heart, Qing Ming's eyes quickly scanned the surroundings, always alert to possible dangers in the dark. Click. A subtle cracking sound came. Qing Ming looked down at his feet suddenly. Vaguely, you can feel a slight vibration there, just like a magnitude 1 or 2 earthquake, and the touch is not strong. But it was this slight vibration that made Qing Ming feel like he was in trouble. Without any hesitation, Qing Ming grabbed Ryosuke and Shizuko Mizutani on both sides and ran toward the side like a flying person. At the same time, he did not forget to remind his teammates and shouted loudly, "Be careful underground." What? Hearing his warning, some people were confused and their reaction was a little slower, while others reacted quickly and ran towards both sides like him. The next moment, the earth cracked, and dozens of gaps of varying sizes accompanied by a strong earthquake suddenly appeared on the way forward of Qing Ming and others. The Konoha Shizuan who had reacted slightly slower just now were swallowed by the cracks almost instantly. It was not until this time that Furukawa and several Shinjinin in front of the team realized the abnormality. This is not to say that Qing Ming's perception is more sharp than these upper ninjas, but the enemy is attacking them, the middle and lower ninjas, specifically avoiding Fukugawa and others. Otherwise, with the alertness of Furukawa and others, it is impossible to detect the movements underground. Before everyone could stand firm, dense rock thorns emerged from the ground, like bamboo shoots springing after the rain, endlessly. Several Konoha ninjas could not dodge and were scratched by rock thorns. Fortunately, no one died because of this. You know, their team has only a total of just over 20 people, and 4 or 5 of them have died in the first wave of attacks. If there are a few more people, then how can they even be fought? All of this is attributed to Qing Ming's shout. It was the reminder that made everyone mentally prepared and not completely deceived by the first wave of attacks, otherwise several people would have to die in this second wave of attacks. Swish 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 swish. Several kunai and several other kunakawa were shot out from the hands of the Hanini. Immediately afterwards, a few crisp metal collisions came from the darkness. Obviously, their attack was stopped. However, the attacks on Qing Ming and other middle-lower ninjas also stopped. Tread. A dull footsteps came. Iwaki Shinjinin came out of the darkness. Seeing the visitor, Furukawa didn't talk nonsense, and immediately asked a Shangnin beside him to confront him, and he led his people to the Iwanori stronghold. Before departure, Qing Ming and others were already informed of the goal of this mission. One is to eliminate the enemy's living forces as much as possible, and the other is to destroy the enemy's reserve materials. Fukawa means that he plans to complete the second one. Qing Ming didn't want to fight with Ionin, so it would be better if he could do this. With an explanation, they can retreat. But will I let them complete the task so easily? The answer is obviously no. As soon as Qing Ming and others approached the village, they were immediately rescued by hundreds of kunai shot towards them. During the day, they just took advantage of their home court to defeat Iwa Ninja. I never thought that retribution came so quickly that I would have to face the enemy's home court at night. This kind of arrogant attitude of not taking kunai as money and throwing it away is not a tactic that they can use away games. Unless you are proficient in time and space ninjas and can carry extra equipment and props with the sealing scroll, the things that ninjas can carry when they go out are very limited. In this case, it is naturally impossible to fight with the other party and consume it. What's more, such defense is not that difficult to break through. Just saw that beside Furukawa, a Konoha cannon walked out quietly, raised her hands, and quickly completed the seal. The next moment, a large amount of chakra gushed out of his body, mixed with the surrounding rain, forming a giant water dragon that was more than 10 meters long. The water dragon roared into the sky, then rushed forward and attacked the not-so-solid wall in front of him. If this crashes, the wall will collapse in an instant, and even the Iwa ninja hiding behind will not be able to make any wish. By then, even if they don't die, they will be injured. In this environment, there is no need to question the power of the water escape and water dragon bomb technique. The Iwa nin obviously understood this, so before the water dragon touched the wall, a roar came out from behind. Don't think about it. As the sound appeared, there was also a tall wall of earth rising from the ground. Qing Ming recognized this technique, which was the B-level ninjutsu known for its defense, earth escape and earth relief wall. Originally, earth escape is more restrained by water escape, and this technique is also used by the Supreme Ninja, so the water dragon bullet cannot break through the opponent's defense at all. Qing Ming only heard a dull collision sound. Feeling the ground under your feet trembling, the water dragon turned into splashes of water, unable to cause any damage to the rock ninja behind. Fortunately, the Shangrin on their side did not only prepare this move. Sorry, I will update today. I am still stuck on the road. I took the time to use my mobile phone code. Chapter 52 Infiltrate. Boom, 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 boom. Accompanied by the dazzling fire, a series of explosions suddenly came from behind the earth wall. At the same time, there were the screams of the Iwa ninjas. Looking at the front of the team again, there were 2 Konoha Yunin missing at some point. It turned out that just now, 2 Konoha cannon took advantage of the confrontation between the two sides and had already used the earth escape ninja technique and sneaked into the Iwa ninja stronghold. Now, it is them who are causing the chaos. After a few breaths, the earth wall created by Iwai Hiroshi collapsed, revealing the chaotic battlefield behind. At this time, the 2 Konoha Shinjini were being besieged by a group of Iwa nini. Seeing this, Furukawa immediately ordered, Team 1, 2, and 3 entangled the enemy, and Team 4 looked for the enemy's material warehouse. Unfortunately, Qing Ming is the fourth team. In addition to him, there are 3 people in the team, and these 3 people are all Zongren. Logically speaking, if a member of the team must have an objection to force a squad into a Zongnan team. But the fact is that after learning about this grouping, the 3 teammates did not express any objection. As for the reasons, it's very simple. In the past month of fighting with Iron Ninja, Qing Ming has confirmed his strength, and he is not inferior to ordinary Zongnian at all. Teammates are not worried that he will drag him down, so they will naturally have no objection. Otherwise, even Furukawa cannot make a decision in one sentence when it comes to life and death. However, only Qing Ming knew that Furukawa had a deeper meaning when he arranged him in. Perhaps in the eyes of the 3 teammates, he is just an ordinary lower nin who has reached the Chunin level, but Furukawa knows that his real strength is definitely higher than the Chunin level. Therefore, when he was arranged in, he actually wanted him to act as a surprise soldier and complete the task at critical moments. Qing Ming had no objection to such an arrangement. Even, compared to fighting on the frontal battlefield, this infiltrating search mission is more in line with his appetite. There is nothing else, mainly because the danger is not high. Although a team of people leaked their whereabouts before their raid was launched, Iwa Nin was still caught off guard. At this time, the Iwajan stronghold was surrounded by all sides, and the enemy's Shangren must have been separated early. Some left-behind middle and lower ninjas did not have much threat to him. You asked why there was no Shangren who stayed there. The reason is very simple. The war between ninjas is not a war for ordinary people after all. Although logistics supplies are equally important, they are still inferior to people. For Yan Hidden Village, it is more important to preserve more viable forces than so-called materials. If the materials are gone, you can continue to raise them, but if the ninja is gone, it will take several years to cultivate them. Therefore, Qing Ming estimated that the Iron Ninja will, like them, send out all the high-end forces as much as possible when they face the enemy, especially when they are blocked by people to the door, to reduce the losses of middle and lower ninjas. Therefore, Qing Ming said that this mission was not very dangerous for him. Of course, it is only for him. For his 3 teammates, that's not certain. Inside the Iwanori stronghold, Qing Ming and his 4 men quickly walked towards the center of the village. At this time, nearly 10 minutes had passed since they sneaked into the village, and finally they figured out the location of the Iwa Ninja materials warehouse. This is also thanks to the fact that there is a Zongren named Yiliang, Shanzhong. Although he is not a direct member of the Shanzhong clan and has not learned the most top-level secret technique of the mind, he has learned the secret technique of reading the mind. A few minutes ago, with the assistance of others, they got rid of the pursuers and sneaked into the village. After that, I spent a little time finding a left-behind Iwai Zongnan. With intentional calculations and no intentions, they succeeded in sneak attack. Afterwards, Yiliang from Shanzhong took action and used the secret technique of reading the mind. Without much effort, he got what he wanted from his head. If the information is correct, the underground in the middle of the village is Iwa Nin's material warehouse. Next, as long as they destroy these materials, the task will be completed. By then, everyone can retreat. But before this, they have to deal with the defensive power inside. When he arrived at the center of the village, Yiliang in the mountains raised his right fist and signaled several people to stop. Then, he made several seals, closed his eyes, and began to sense the surrounding situation. Qing Ming didn't know what the ninjutsu he used was called, but he could vaguely feel the spiritual energy that was constantly spreading outward from him. I think it should be the secret technique of the mountain clan. Just as Qing Ming was thinking, Shanzhong Yiliang suddenly opened his eyes and looked at him suddenly, with a hint of surprise and uncontrollable scrutiny flashing in his eyes. What's wrong? Seeing that the other party looked at him, Qing Ming's expression remained unchanged and he spoke calmly. Hearing this, Shanzhong Yiliang came to his senses, put away his scrutiny gaze, and replied in a plain tone, "It's nothing." Seeing this, Qing Ming frowned slightly. Recalling the other party's gaze just now, Qing Ming felt that the other party should have seen something. Sharingan. Single quote. Qing Ming just had this idea in his mind, but he quickly denied it. Nothing else, without opening the Sharingan, let alone a half-baked mountain tribe, even if the clan leader of the mountain tribe comes, I am afraid that nothing unusual can be seen. Then, there is only one possibility. Feeling the magnificent chakra in his body, Qing Ming said, "Did you find that my chakra is different from that of ordinary people?" Before leaving, in order to improve his survival rate as much as possible, he did not waste chakra, and even specialized in the operation of the chakra refining technique, to restore a lot of chakra. This caused the chakra volume in his body to break through the 4,500 point mark. And this has far exceeded the chakra volume of most Zongren. You should know that he is only 11 years old now. According to the growth rules of ninjas, this age has not yet entered the stage of rapid development. In other words, his chakra volume will increase in the future. And he did not reveal the existence of the Sharingan on the surface, so this amount of chakra is naturally not normal. Qing Ming himself knows this. So, whether in the base camp or in the town stronghold, he is controlling the amount of chakra in his body, while reducing contact with strangers and not exposing abnormalities as much as possible. Unexpectedly, I actually missed the stuffing today. Qing Ming estimated that he was too close to Yiliang in the mountains just now, so the other party felt a little abnormality with ninjutsu. In fact, this is indeed the case. The secret technique that Yiliang in the mountains just used is called the touch of spirit, which can sense the number of living people within a certain range and roughly estimate their strength. The way to estimate strength is to find out the number of target chakra. Originally, the investigation result was not very accurate, but this chakrato that couldn't stand Qing Ming. Just now, when Yiliang in the mountains used his spiritual touch, he was shocked by Qing Ming beside him, and he thought the other party was disguised by some supreme ninja. After confirming that he was really Qing Ming himself, he felt even more shocked. But, in the current mission, he doesn't have time to think about it. Chapter 53 Quick Battle. Qing Ming looked at the facelessly closed his eyes again, and began to feel the coldness in the mountains, and said in his heart, I hope you don't think of the Sharingan, or, even if you think of it, don't say it out, otherwise. Inexplicably, Yiliang in the mountains felt a chill, and instinctively moved his body, slightly away from Qing Ming. A moment later, Yamakura Yiliang opened his eyes and said, the enemy has two squads, one guards the two-story building in front, and the other hidden underground, both of which are standard squads. The so-called standard Shinen team is a team composed of one Zongnan and three Shinen. In addition, there are the Chunin squad and the Shangjin squad. The former is usually composed of one special upper ninja plus 3 Zongnan, or 4 Zongnan, and is generally used to perform some tasks with difficulty around B level. Just like their team and the mission they are carrying out. During this period, it may be very likely to fight enemy ninjas, but usually no singular ninjas are involved. As for the latter, the composition is a bit complicated. Depending on the difficulty of the task, it is generally composed of 1 or 2 Shangnan, plus several Zongnan elites. If the situation is extremely extreme, it is not ruled out that the Shangnan teams. However, this kind of task is usually handed over to an elite Shangjinin. After all, every Shangnan is the pillar of the village, and it is too wasteful to put them together to perform tasks. This situation is probably only frequent during war periods. Otherwise, there is generally no team formation between the Supreme Ninja and the Supreme Ninja. The topic is too far-reaching. Since there are only 2 squads in it, there is no need to worry about anything, just fight quickly. Qing Ming's thoughts are also everyone's thoughts. So, without too much hesitation, the 4 of them rushed into the building ahead. Swish 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 swish. More than a dozen kunai shot in a hurry. Leave it to me. Qing Ming shouted softly, and a big step came to everyone. He heard a bang, and a short blade was pulled out from his waist. Then there was the sound of metal collision. In just one blink of an eye, all the kunai shot in the shooting were shot down by Qing Ming, which did not affect the 4 people at all. Yiliang and others in Shanjiang fully believed in Qing Ming's strength, and before they could land, they all rushed out. The next moment, the sound of fighting came. In the small building, 4 Iwa ninjas faced the raid from 3 Konoha Chunin and fought hard. Qing Ming looked around and confirmed that no one was hiding, and immediately launched an attack on the only Iwai Zongnan in the field. The Iwai Zongnan felt a flash in front of him, and Qing Ming came to him. So fast. Iwai Yinjiang was secretly shocked. However, Qing Ming, no matter what he thought, he raised his hand and slashed his hand when he got closer. The knife was as fast as lightning, and only a ray of cold light was left in the air. Iwai Yin Zongren's face changed slightly, and he instinctively raised Cuba and blocked him. Ding! A crisp metallic sound came. Iwai Hiko Zongnan felt his arms numb, and Kuu almost flew out. He was defending in a hurry and his strength was not that strong. Only Qing Ming is still a child, his strength is slightly weaker than that of an adult, otherwise he would definitely be able to kill the other party's kunai with one knife. However, this does not matter. After a slight stalemate, Qing Ming suddenly turned his wrist and the short blade changed from chop to pick, slashing at the other party's face. Seeing this, Iwai Zongren quickly leaned back. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Konoha Chunin, who had just fought, suddenly threw out the kana in his hand, and the target pointed directly at the other party's chest and abdomen. Recognizing the danger, Iwaki Junin immediately twisted his waist, trying to avoid Kosa's attack. But he couldn't even stand steadily at this time, let alone avoid it. In the end, Kyubi brushed his body and left a serious scar on his waist. Blood ticked down. As the saying goes, take your life while you are sick. Qing Ming will not have any sympathy when dealing with the enemy. A cold light flashed, and Qing Ming waved his sword again and attacked Yanyan Zongren. Ding! Ding ding ding! At first, Iwahiko Chunin could still keep up with his pace, but after more than a dozen moves, he couldn't do it. Koi flow sword technique is not a garbage sword technique. It combines the advantages of many sword techniques and highlights the fast, accurate and ruthless. Especially after Qing Ming practiced him to LV3, he could pick up all kinds of sword moves and became more aggressive. Therefore, the Iwai Zongren in front of him could not stop him at all. Not to mention that there is a Konoha Chunin next to him who attacked Lengxi. So, with just over 30 moves, Qing Ming seized the opportunity and sent the short blade in his hand into the chest of Iwai Zongnan in front of him. Puchi. The sound of sharp blades entering the flesh sounded. Iwai Hiko Zongnan looked down at the short blade that was sank into his chest. The kunai in his hand slipped away, and his mouth opened as if he was about to say something, but in the end, he couldn't say a word. Confirming that the other party was dead, Qing Ming pulled out the short blade and looked around again. At this time, the three Iwahiko Shinan's situation in the other two battlefields was also in danger. Qing Ming was worried about an accident and didn't want to waste time, so he didn't stop and immediately rushed to one of the Iwaki Shinan with a knife. Similarly, Konoha Junin who just assisted him also rushed to a Iwahiko Shinan. 3-4, the enemy's strength is all stronger than that of our own. How should we fight? 3 Iwakari was filled with despair. In despair, a strong combat power burst out. But this is of no use. In less than 2 minutes, all 3 Iwakari Shinan fell to the ground. Qing Ming and others cleaned the battlefield a little, replenished the number of shuriken and kuna, and immediately asked, where is the underground entrance? Here. There was no nonsense in the mountains, so I immediately stepped forward to lead the way. 4 people walked through the first floor lobby and came to a corridor inside. Yiliang from Shanjiang glanced at the door numbers on both sides, compared the memories in his mind, and finally locked a room marked 107 and said, the entrance is in this room. Pushing open the door, a sound of breaking through the air came. The 4 of them immediately flashed toward both sides. Dong 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 dong. A dozens of kunai shot out and were nailed to the door opposite. Just at this moment, a sizzling sound came. The 4 of them looked at the sound and saw a few explosion talismans burning violently. Finally, some expressions appeared on the faces of several people, but they were not to panic. Nothing else. Before coming over, everyone thought that the enemy might be ambushed. After all, although the previous battle ended quickly, it was not unchanged. It was normal for another Iwa ninja team to notice. So, no matter whether it was a sneak attack when opening the door or seeing these detonating talismans, the 4 of them did not make a fuss. And if you are prepared, it is not that difficult to hide. Almost in an instant, the 4 of them opened the distance from room 107. Then, he pushed open the doors on both sides and froze in. Boom, 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 boom. Several explosions sounded one after another. The red flames quickly spread along the corridor to both sides with huge shock waves. Chapter 54 Mission Completion and Bad News. Crunch. The door was pushed open. Qing Ming and his 4 walked out of the room, walked through the charred corridor, and came to both sides of the door of room 107. Then, I saw Yiliang in the mountains making a gesture. Qing Ming and others nodded. Then, they took out a kunai, carefully wrapped it in the detonation talisman, and then threw it into room 107 under the cool gesture of 3, 2, 1 inch in the mountains. Careful. Immediately, Iwainen's slightly anxious warning sound came from the room. However, this does not prevent the explosion of the detonator. Boom, 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 boom. A violent explosion sounded. Immediately afterwards, a red flame surged out from the door of room 107, making Qing Ming and others' cheeks hurt. Not only that, the walls on both sides of the room also shook 3 times in the huge explosion. In such a narrow area, the damage caused by the detonation talisman is far greater than detonating in an open space. I don't know what happened to the Iwa ninja inside. Single quote. Thinking of this in his heart, Qing Ming took the lead and took advantage of the moment when the flames disappeared, holding the short blade in his hand, and rushing into the room. In the smoke, several shurikens shot towards him quickly. Qing Ming was calm and waved the short blade in his hand one after another. He heard a ding-tone sound, and the shuriken that was shot down one by one. At this time, his 3 teammates rushed in. 2 o'clock direction. At the first moment, the enemy's location was reported in the cold mountain. The other 2 men immediately crossed the mountain without any hesitation and rushed to the front right at an extremely fast speed. There, a Iwaki Junin was half exposed on the ground, preparing to launch a second wave of sneak attacks. Looking at the other party's appearance, Qing Ming knew that the other party must have used the entrance of the underground warehouse to avoid the attack of the detonation talisman. Otherwise, if you are exposed by several explosion talismans in such a small room, even if the other party does not die, he will be seriously injured. Just like the Iwakening ninja who fell in front of him at this time, although he avoided the frontal damage of the detonation talisman, he was still inevitably injured by the explosion shock wave. How could it be like now? I still have the strength to launch a counterattack. He shook his head secretly. Qing Ming no longer thought about it and put his eyes back on the other party. At this time, the Iwaki Junin had already crawled out of the entrance of the underground warehouse and fought with the 2 Konoha Junins who rushed up. In addition, 2 Iwakishishinen rushed out of the tunnel after him, and fought with Yiliang, the mountain he arrived later. Seeing this, Qing Ming took out 6 shurikens, clamped them between their fingers, and stared at several Iwa ninjas with his eyes. The next moment, he threw 6 shurikens, with speeds fast and slow. 2 even touched them in the air, changing their flight trajectories. Then there was the muffled groan from 3 Iwa ninjas. Only 2 of the 6 shurikens were lost, and the remaining 4 were all inserted into Iwa ninjas. Although it didn't hit the nail on the head, it was enough for 3 companions to seize the opportunity and end the battle. After counting breaths, accompanied by a few short screams, all 3 Iwa ninjas fell to the ground and lost their rest. After confirming that the enemies were all eliminated, Qing Ming and others did not waste time and immediately entered the Iron Ninja's material warehouse through the tunnel entrance. It can be seen that this is an underground space of 200 square meters, which is obvious at first glance, which was excavated with earth escape ninjutsu. Shelves were placed on the open space, with a lot of supplies, including food, ninja tools, injury medicine, detonation talismans, etc., and all kinds of things that are necessary for ninjas. Especially the detonation talisman, it saves them a lot of time. Qing Ming and others discussed it, took out all the detonation talismans and pasted them in every corner of the warehouse. After doing all this, the 4 of them carefully exited the underground space. Yiliang, Shanzhong, took several insurance measures at the entrance of the tunnel. After confirming that there would be no problem, he said, "Okay, in 3 minutes, the agency will be triggered and we can leave." After hearing this, several people looked at each other and then quickly ran outside. To be honest, no one will feel at ease when standing on such a large, powder barrel, even if the detonation talismans were arranged by them personally. If this is exploded, let alone standing on it, even if they stay away for a while, they may be affected. So, it is better to leave early. Next, they had only one goal, which was to do their best to rush to the town base. As for the signal of completing the task, please. With that large, powder barrel, there, what other signals do you need? Tick, tick. Time passes by minute. 3 minutes later, a huge explosion came from the middle of the village, and the red flames shone into the sky through the gaps on the ground, making the entire village lit up. Not only that, with the village as the center, the ground within a radius of 2 or 3 kilometers showed a strong tremor. Outside, Konoha ninja in 4 directions saw this movement and immediately realized that someone had completed the task. So, he started to fight and retreat. But Ionin seemed to be angry, but he actually bit her, which led to a very unsuccessful retreat plan. Both sides chased and fled, and continued to fight life and death. In the end, at this stage, the number of casualties on both sides even exceeded the initial melee. Qing Ming and others were inevitably involved. Even with the early perception of Yiliang in the mountains, they still encountered enemies several times, and even one of their companions who performed the mission together died. Wait until the town base is back in the middle of the night. Qing Ming then realized that the loss of this mission was far beyond his imagination. The number of people appearing in the stronghold was nearly 1/2 less than when he set out. With a heavy mood, Qing Ming returned to his team's station, and then at first glance, Shizuko Mizutani with red eyes. Somehow, Qing Ming's heart skipped a beat and suddenly had a bad premonition. Sure enough, he heard bad news next. Ao Ming, Ryosuke and teacher Wu Wu and they are all dead. Wu Wu Wu. As he said that, Shizuko Mizutani cried. Qing Ming was stunned when he heard this, and his mind quickly flashed through his mind. Although he didn't spend a long time with Ryosuke, and often he would refuse the invitation from the party and practice alone, his optimistic and positive personality still left some marks in his heart. Now, when Qing Ming suddenly heard the other party's death, he felt unrealistic. And Mr. Furukawa. Although he did not teach him a lot in ninjutsu, he accumulated rich combat experience and helped him with some of his requests. It can be said that these 2 people are one of his only concerns in this world. Inhale, exhale. Taking a deep breath, then slowly exhaled it to calm your mood as much as possible. Qing Ming looked at Shizuko Mizutani and asked, "How did the teacher and the others die?" Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 55 Return. Hearing his inquiry, Shizuko Mizutani cried even more sadly. From his intermittent narrative, Qing Ming knew that it turned out that Fukugawa was trying to cover the entire team's retreat and was finally killed by 2 Iwaki Shangnan. As for Ryosuke, then he sacrificed simply to protect Shizuko Mizutani. When they retreated, they were unlucky and encountered a team of Iwaki Zongnan. In order to protect Shizuko Mizutani, Ryosuke fought to the death, but the gap in strength cannot be easily smeared by hard work. In the end, the 2 were defeated by the other 4, and Ryosuke died on the spot. Afterwards, if it weren't for a Konoha cannon who happened to pass by and caught Shizuko Mizutani, the other party might have been killed. Qing Ming glanced at Shizuko Mizutani and realized that there were indeed many injuries on the other party. It is not difficult to see from these injuries alone how critical the situation was at that time. At this time, Qing Ming was wondering if he had not performed the mission of sneaking into the Iron Ninja stronghold, would it be better to stay by their side? After thinking for a while, Qing Ming had the answer. In terms of the result alone, it was definitely better. With his current strength, he will definitely be able to protect Fukugawa. This is too difficult. After all, the enemy is two real ninjas. But it is more than enough to save Ryosuke and Shizuko Mizutani's lives. Just 4 Iwaki Junini are not his opponents, and they can't even join forces. But if he takes a step back, he will never be a nanny for 2 people for the rest of his life. Not to mention his care for the 2 people when he was on duty on weekdays, he took considerable risks to save the 2 people just when he was ambushed by Iron Nin and attacked at night. Qing Ming thinks that he has done enough and there is still a problem in this situation, so he can only blame them for their bad luck. Therefore, Qing Ming didn't feel guilty about the deaths of Ryosuke and Furukawa, at most he felt a little regretful. We must improve our strength as soon as possible. Qing Ming secretly made up his mind. After all, Ryosuke's death was not strong enough, otherwise he could survive the danger even if he encountered danger. Therefore, strength is the foundation of everything. As soon as he thought of this, Qing Ming no longer wasted his time. He comforted Shizuko Mizutani and sent him to the medical ninja. After completing the initial treatment, he began to practice on his own. A few hours later, it was dawn. Accompanied by the sound of wheels rolling, the ninja who came to take over them came to the town stronghold. After the 2 sides made a handover, Qing Ming and others began to rush to the base camp. There were 120 people when they came, but less than 50 when they returned, with a death rate of nearly 60%, which is cruel. Among the surviving ninjas, most of them are middle to high ninjas, and there are not many lower ninjas at all. Why would you say that ninja is cannon fodder on the battlefield? Of course, there are special circumstances this time. Generally speaking, the death rate of ninjas in frontline rotation is not as terrifying as 60%. At least, a single rotation cannot reach this level. On the way, the atmosphere in the team was a bit dull. Qing Ming glanced at Shizuko Mizutani beside him. After several hours of cultivation, the other party's condition has improved a lot, but judging from his expression, he should not be able to emerge from the shadow of his teacher and his companions, death. Qing Ming has no good idea in this regard, so he can only rely on time to erase all this. As time passes by minute, the team is moving forward at a speed that is neither fast nor slow. There was no supplies. They could have been faster, but there were too many wounded people in the team, so they could only slow down. Despite this, they returned to the base camp before dark. The mission report didn't require him to worry about it. After returning to the base camp, Qing Ming started practicing without stopping. Just so happens that this time there is a long holiday, and he can first use the chakra refining technique to LV4. 2 days later, late at night, inside the tent, Qing Ming suddenly opened his eyes, unable to hide his joy in his eyes. After 2 days of practice, his chakra refining technique was finally promoted from LV3 to LV4. Then it depends on how it works. With a murmur, Qing Ming closed his eyes again, began to meditate, and refine chakra. It would be fine if this is not refined. Once it is refined, Qing Ming noticed the difference. If he was talking about LV3, he was using a small water pipe to extract the body and mental energy contained in his body. Now, a high-pressure pump is added to this water pipe, and the extraction speed is greatly improved. 1 hour later, Qing Ming opened his eyes, opened the panel and glanced at it. Chakra increased by 800 points. And at LV3, this number is 400 points. In other words, the chakra refining technique has doubled its chakra recovery speed after it has increased to LV4. In this way, he can spend more time practicing ninjutsu and other skills. Before, when he had never learned the Koba flow sword technique, he didn't have to worry about not having enough time. After all, it wouldn't take much time to perform a ninjutsu. All he needs to worry about is whether chakra is enough. But when he learned the koi flow sword technique, especially after he took his liver to LV3, he had to pay attention. Although practicing this technique does not require much chakra, if you want to accumulate proficiency, you must practice it over and over again. And this process takes a lot of time. So, for Qing Ming, the time-saving effect is just right. In addition, there is the most important amount of chakra recovery. Before his physical attribute unexpectedly broke through 8 points, he could only use up to 3,500 chakra points per day, and when he broke through 8 points, the number became 4,200. Qing Ming once predicted that the number of chakra refining will be promoted to LV4, and this number will be increased. Now it seems that his estimate is not wrong. Although he has not undergone detailed tests, based on the last hour of practice, he can already estimate a rough value of minus 5,500. That's right, it's 5,500 points. This number is 1,300 points higher than the previous value. If you use all these chakras in the practice of spiritual of heart, you can gain 7.6 proficiency. And 5 points of proficiency can increase the evolution of his Sharingan a little. In other words, his Sharingan will have an average of 1.5 more proficiency per day in the future. This will undoubtedly increase the evolution speed of his Sharingan again. The only regret is that his basic attributes have not changed, his potential has long been explored, and the chakra upper limit can only grow slowly over time. Otherwise, he will know how many points can he increase the chakra limit in 1 hour by running LV4s, chakra refinement. According to the previous rule of double the increase 3 times, this time it should go from 8 o'clock every hour to 16 o'clock. In this way, his basic attributes will be improved in the future and his potential can be realized in the shortest time. Opening parenthesis. Chapter 56 The Storm is Coming. Base Camp. Northwest. Training Ground. Qing Ming held a short blade in his hand and fought with Shizuko Mizutani. The ding-dangling sound kept ringing, and Shizuko Mizutani launched an attack with all her strength, but was blocked by Qing Ming one by one. The whole process was indescribable and freehand. After a long time, Shizuko Mizutani finally stopped attacking. It can be seen that sweat had already wet her clothes, and the hair on her forehead was also randomly pressed on her face, and her whole body was visible to the naked eye. Despite this, her eyes still revealed indescribable perseverance. Seeing this scene, Qing Ming could only sigh in his heart. The other party transferred all his regrets to his desire for strength. If this situation is not guided, problems will arise sooner or later. But Qing Ming didn't want to persuade him. As the saying goes, you will not survive without being crazy. In this chaotic world, how can you survive if you don't force yourself to become more ruthless? Moreover, it is better to devote all your thoughts to improving your strength than to complain, right? After a while, Shizuko Mizutani raised the kawaii in her hand again and said to Qing Ming, "Come again." Hearing this, Qing Ming didn't say much, just a single step, and instantly came to his body, and the koi flow sword technique was used smoothly. This time, Qing Ming launched an attack, and Shizuko Mizutani was under greater pressure. In just a moment, she couldn't hold on. The kunai in her hand was knocked away, and Qing Ming's short sword hit her throat. Dripping cold sweat slid from my forehead, and Shizuko Mizutani swallowed unconsciously. Although she knew that Qing Ming would not kill, she couldn't help but shivered when her throat was pushed by the sword tip. Putting away the short sword, Qing Ming looked at the sky, and after Shizuko Mizutani recovered, he said, "The time is almost the same, let's get here today." Shizuko Mizutani nodded and bent down and said, "Thank you for your hard work, Qing Ming Lord." Hearing this, Qing Ming waved his hand and said nothing. He used Shizuko Mizutani as a sparring training. Although he spent some time and energy, these were what he planned to use in the Koba flow sword technique. Although the effective practice is not as good as when fighting Furukawa is now dead. It is better to have the opponent Shizuko Mizutani than to practice alone. So, this is a mutually beneficial process, and Qing Ming doesn't think Shizuko Mizutani needs to thank for this. But the other party always did this, so Qing Ming just let it go. A few minutes later, the two returned to the base camp. While walking, a large group of people came towards us. Both sides passed by. Qing Ming suddenly stopped and looked back at the people. Seeing this, Shizuko Mizutani asked, "What's wrong? Do you think they look familiar?" Qing Ming asked. Upon hearing this, Shizuko Mizutani glanced at the backs of those people, then turned around and asked in confusion, "It's so big here, isn't it normal to look familiar?" "No." Qing Ming shook his head with a serious expression and said, "It's different. Haven't you discovered that they are some of the people who succeeded us at the town stronghold?" "What?" When Mizutani Shizuko heard this, she was shocked and hurriedly looked at the people again, but those people were no longer visible. She looked at Qing Ming and asked in confusion, "Didn't it be a rotation every month? It's only 10 days past, why are people coming back? Is there something big happening there?" Speaking of this, Shizuko Mizutani couldn't help but recall their previous experiences, and a deep fear and indescribable pain flashed in her eyes. Hearing her words, Qing Ming shook his head again and said negatively, "Looking at the status of those people, there is no big problem, so there is very little possibility of an accident in the stronghold. Then why did they come back early?" Shizuko Mizutani spoke again. Qing meditated for a while, but shook his head and said, "I don't know." Then, he turned his voice and said seriously, "Anyway, be careful these days, and his intuition tells me that something big is going to happen." Hearing Qing Ming's instructions, Shizuko Mizutani nodded seriously. Then, the two walked towards their respective tents. Back at the tent, Qing Ming swallowed a few soldiers and food pills, and while recovering his strength, he recalled what happened in the past few days. First, there was an unreasonable attack on the whole line, and then the ninja who went to rotate secretly returned to the part. All of this gave Qing Ming a feeling of storm. What he said just now was not a nonsense, but really thinking that something big will happen. Unfortunately, the position is too low to see the overall situation clearly. So, what Qing Ming can do is just to improve his strength as much as possible. Panel. With a thought, Qing Ming opened the proficiency panel again. The next moment, a light blue light curtain appeared. Name: Uchiha Aomi. Age: 11 years old. Physical constitution: 8. Spirit: 9. Chakra: 2250, 6100 right pointing arrow 6102. Bloodline. Sharingan single Gotu 271 1000ths right pointing arrow 317 1000ths. Skill. Chakra refining. LV4 1 2000th right pointing arrow LV4 50 2000ths. Fire escape the art of the great fireball. LV2 35 500ths. Fire escape Phoenix immortal fire art. LV3 12 1000ths right pointing arrow LV3 226 1000ths. Fire escape dragon fire technique. LV2 17 500ths. Instant body technique. LV3 225 1000ths right pointing arrow LV3 305 1000ths. Shadow clone technique. LV0 5 100ths. Healing technique. LV1 15 200ths. Magic the art of shackles. LV2 5 500ths. The art of reflecting the heart. LV4 716 2000ths right pointing arrow LV4 946 2000ths. Konoha flow sword technique. LV3 431 thousandths right pointing arrow LV3 615 1000ths. Ninja tool throwing. LV4 52 thousandths. Chakra control. LV3 191 thousandths. 3 body techniques. LV3 0 over 0. In the past few days, he has focused on practicing the Shining Heart technique, and the Koi Flow Sword technique, and the Fire Escape Phoenix Immortal Fire technique. The impact of the Chakra Refining technique to LV4 has initially emerged. In just a few days, his 3 skills have been improved well. Especially the Science of Heart, the proficiency increased by 230 points. Thanks to this, his Sharingan's evolution has also increased by 46 points, and his progress has come from 271 1000ths to 317 1000ths, and he is about to complete 1/3 of the process. At this speed, in another 4 months, his Sharingan will be able to evolve and become a double Magma Sharingan. And this is just a situation where the level of the Spirit of Heart Reflection remains unchanged. The fact is that in about a month and a half, his Heart Reflection technique will advance. By then, its promotion effect on Sharingan will inevitably become more obvious. In this way, the evolution of Sharingan must take less than 4 months. Thinking of this, Qing Ming couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. His efforts were finally in vain, and everything was moving forward according to his expectations. Retracting his gaze, Qing Ming turned his attention to the newly emerging skill in the skill bar, healing technique. This is a medical ninjutsu he has only learned recently. It was also after learning this technique that he realized why there were so few medical ninjas in the ninja world. Let's not talk about the theoretical knowledge that requires rote memory, medical ninjutsu alone is very difficult. Just like this, healing technique, although it is just a relatively basic medical ninjutsu, the difficulty of learning is still at level C. In addition, practicing this technique requires extremely fine control of chakra, otherwise you can only learn a superficial approach. These major conditions directly limit the number of medical ninjas. Only Qing Ming's chakra control has already reached LV3, and it is assisted by the proficiency panel. You get what you work hard to get what you gain. This is the only way to get started in just a few days. Another person, let alone a few days, he may not be able to learn even if he has dozens of days. At this point, Qing Ming fulfilled his wish when he first came to the front-line battlefield, and he took another step closer to the hexagonal warrior in his target. Chapter 57 Meeting. In the next few days, Qing Ming paid attention to the changes in the camp and found some problems. First of all, the number of ninjas in the base camp is continuing to increase, and many of them are in a dusty state, and they look quite a bit too busy. Combined with the group of people I met a few days ago, Qing Ming had reason to suspect that these people were all rushing back from the frontline stronghold. Secondly, the external contact channels of the base camp have been tightened, and any person or thing entering and leaving need to undergo several inspections. Even the training ground is not allowed to go now. There is also a perception barrier that covers the entire camp, which is even open all day long. Any movement may attract the attention of the patrol troops. He didn't believe that there was no big move next time and he wouldn't believe it. Forget it, I don't want to do this anymore, continue to practice. Single quote. Shaking his head, Qing Ming withdrew his thoughts and began to continue his practice. Now, he can't go to the training ground anymore, so he simply used all his chakra to practice the soul reflecting technique. In this way, you can obtain proficiency of more than 30 points every day, which is converted into the progress of Sharingan, which is 6 points. Seeing the progress subsequently improved little by little, Qing Ming didn't feel bored at all, he just felt very down to earth. In this way, another 3 days have passed. That afternoon, central of the base camp. Inside a tent. More than a dozen Konoha kumenin gathered together and sat on both sides of the long table, silent. A moment later, a thin man with pale skin lifted the curtain, walked in, and sat straight on the seat at the top. At the same time, everyone stood up on both sides of the long table and greeted, Sir Orochimaru. Orochimaru nodded slightly and signaled everyone to sit down. Then, he asked directly, are all the staff in place? Hearing this, a Konoha canon immediately stood up and said, Sir, as of an hour ago, the reservation personnel have reached 90%, and the remaining people will return before tonight. Good. Orochimaru replied lightly, then looked at the other person and said, how is the message blockade? Seeing Orochimaru look over, Konoha canon tightened his heart slightly, but he quickly replied, no sign of intelligence leak is found for the time being, but what? Orochimaru asked. Sahidin village and Iwa Hidden village seem to have noticed something. In the past few days, the peripheral patrol troops have discovered several waves of people trying to infiltrate. Konoha Kumini replied. Is that true? Orochimaru pondered and said, this is normal. After all, we have transferred so many people from the front line. As long as the other party is not blind, they will always find some abnormalities, as long as they ensure that the action plan is not leaked. Hearing this, the Konoha canon immediately promised, don't worry, sir, the information has never been leaked. Orochimaru nodded. He believed in the ability of this subordinate. Since he made such a guarantee, it means that the situation is controllable. After thinking for a while, he turned to look at the corner of the tent and asked, where are you there? Everyone looked at his side and saw that there was a figure wrapped in a black robe there at some point. This person is not someone else, but Konoha Onbi. No, to be more precise, he is a ninja under Danzo and the Orchid organization. Compared with Onbi ninjas, the ninjas of the Root organization are even more cold-blooded and ruthless. In order to complete tasks, they can sacrifice everything, including but not limited to their own lives, and are a veritable task tool. Orochimaru asked these people to come from Danzo to cooperate with him and complete the revenge plan. That's right, it's revenge. Revenge on the raid launched by Yan Hidden Village and Sa Hidden Village more than a month ago. The previous full-line attack was just the preparation of this plan, and the next action is the focus. However, if you have to face the two major ninja villages at the same time, Konoha's troops on the battlefield of the Rain country are obviously not as powerful as that. So, after some careful consideration, Orochimaru finally set his goal on Iwahiden village, which has a higher hatred. However, Sakai village cannot be ignored. The two villages have a brief joint effort last time, and no one can guarantee that they will not join forces this time. Even if they don't join forces, the base camp will inevitably be empty once they take action. If the house is stolen by the Sand village, it will be a lot of fun. If you want to keep Sahikang village from moving around, you must cause some things to distract them. Orochimaru organized the ninja to come over to do this. At this time, when he heard Orochimaru's inquiry, the man in black immediately replied, everything is ready. After the plan begins, several important figures in Sand village in the Rain country will be assassinated. Yes, Orochimaru's plan is so simple and crude. As long as the ninjas of the Root organization can assassinate one or two important figures, the command system of Sakura village will inevitably be in chaos. When they reacted and sorted out the command system again, their actions on the side would have ended long ago, so they would not be afraid that the other party would take advantage of the situation. As for whether the assassination can be successful. If the Onbi ninja comes to execute, Orochimaru may still be worried, but if it is a ninja from the Orchid organization, then there is no need to worry. With the action of the Root organization, when you master the whereabouts of the target person, not to mention the success of the assassination 100%, you will have a success rate of at least 50% or 60%. Orochimaru didn't expect the Orochimaru to solve all the target characters, because that was unrealistic. No matter how weak Sakai village is, it is one of the 5 major ninja villages. Assassination of an important figure in such a village is not that simple. But as long as he can successfully assassinate a few, his plan can continue smoothly. And this is enough. After confirming that everything was ready, Orochimaru stopped hesitating and immediately ordered, you go down and prepare immediately, and act on time at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. Yes. Inside the tent, more than a dozen Konoha Kumini responded in unison. Orochimaru waved his hand and signaled everyone to retreat. Soon, the tent became empty. At this time, Orochimaru rubbed his eyebrows hard, and a look of fatigue appeared on his face. To be honest, he doesn't like to do these things. Compared to dealing with these chores, he likes to study ninjutsu and explore the mystery of immortality. But as a disciple of the 3rd generation of Naruto, he has the responsibility and obligation to share the pressure for his teacher. Just like Jiraiya is the battlefield of the Wind Kingdom, he needs to be in the Rain Kingdom. How great it would be if there was no war. Recalling his dead parents, close friends and apprentices, Orochimaru couldn't help but whisper. Inexplicably, he felt a little irritable in his heart, and he couldn't help but want to throw away everything and concentrate on the job he liked. Unfortunately, he couldn't do this. Close your eyes and empty your head, Orochimaru tried his best to calm himself down. Suddenly, his slight breathing sound remained in the tent. Chapter 58 Action begins. The next day. Night. In the drizzle, a large group of Konoha ninjas are moving forward rapidly. Qing Ming raised his head and glanced around him. It was densely packed with figures. It was estimated that there were hundreds or thousands of people. Except for the ninjas who stayed at the base camp and frontline strongholds, Orochimaru used almost all the ninjas that could be used. From this we can see how strong the operation is. It was not until noon today that Qing Ming received the mission notice, knowing that the target of this mission was to attack a stronghold in Yan Hidden Village. Orochimaru put such a lot of effort into attacking an ordinary stronghold. In fact, this stronghold is the largest material transfer center in the Rain country of Iwaken Village, responsible for providing various materials to two-thirds of the battlefield. Once this stronghold falls, Yan Hidden Village will not organize any decent attacks in the next 1 or 2 months. It was also at this time that Qing Ming vaguely understood why Orochimaru had asked them to launch a full-line attack before. First, I am afraid that I want to send people to the front line through both sides of the loss, so as to create emptiness in the rear, so as to lay the foundation for the current action. This is an open plot. Even if Iwahiden Village detects an abnormality, it must send more personnel to the front line, otherwise Orochimaru will definitely launch a second full-line attack. At that time, you may not be able to make a false act and push the front to Iwai. In this way, the situation will be even more unfavorable. Therefore, Yanyan Village can only dispatch personnel to the front line to make up for the shortcomings in the front line's combat power. At this time, Orochimaru had some investigation and determined the goal. Then, some of the personnel were quietly transferred back, forming a numerical advantage in short supply. This is his confidence in launching this raid. There is also the second mission target during the attack on the whole line, that is, the mission performed by Qing Ming, destroying the reserve materials in the enemy's stronghold. This may be the foreshadowing of the shortage of supplies in Iwahiden Village after Orochimaru's battle for this. In addition, there is also Sand Hidden Village. How to ensure that the other party will not take advantage of the situation. Qing Ming probably has made arrangements for Orochimaru. Tisk tisk, it's really a link. Single quote. With a sigh in his heart, Qing Ming followed the large army to speed up his pace. According to the plan, after they arrive at the predetermined location, they will be divided into 3 teams, 2 of which are responsible for blocking the enemy's reinforcements, and the third team is responsible for attacking the strongholds in the front. What? You said that the information was not leaked, why do you still need to block the enemy's reinforcements? Please. They will definitely notice their large-scale actions as long as Yan Hidden Village is not a blind man. Even if you don't find it on the way, the Yenshi Village Command will get news when the battle begins. Ninjas don't have too many ways to convey information to the outside world, let alone such an important stronghold, and there must be an emergency channel to contact the headquarters. Therefore, it is almost inevitable for the enemy to provide support. In this way, is Orochimaru's preparations made so much useless? Of course the answer is no. Everything Orochimaru did was just to create a time difference, so that Iwahiden Village could not respond effectively at the first time. And this is enough. Next, the competition is the hard strength of both sides. If your hard power is not good, even if you play tricks, it will not be of much use. In line with that sentence, in the face of absolute strength, any conspiracy is futile. All Orochimaru could do was to tilt the balance of victory slightly towards Konoha. Shifted. More than 10 hours have passed. Time is coming early the next morning. It was dawn. Qing Ming and his group stopped in a dense forest. The course of the mission has been planned long ago, and no accidents occurred along the way. Next, they will rest here for a day, and wait until night falls, and then continue to rush through the cover of the night. In this way, you can arrive at the reserved location almost tomorrow morning. After that, after a little rest, a raid will be launched before noon. This arrangement will make time a little tight, but it is a necessity, because if you drag on it, the risk of exposure will rise sharply. In order to catch Iwa Ninja off guard, he had to launch an attack as soon as possible. The next day, morning, Qing Ming and others arrived at the scheduled location successfully. After a little rest, the team was divided into 3 parts. Qing Ming and Shizuko Mizutani followed a team of 300 people and headed to the first blocking point. This is a river-valley corridor with mountains on both sides, a long river in the middle, and relatively spacious sandy land on both sides of the river. This corridor connects the headquarters of Iwaken Village in Rainland, and is the closest route to that logistics base. If Yanyan headquarters supports it, it is likely to go here. And their mission is to drag the enemy's reinforcements here to buy time for the 3 teams to attack the Iwagen stronghold. As the largest and most important logistics base in the Rain country, Yangxiong Village is garrisoned there and has a strong combat power. In this way, coupled with the advantage of home fighting, even if they have the advantage of troops, it is impossible to break through in a short period of time. Therefore, the blocking mission is destined to not be easy. It can be imagined that this will inevitably be another tragic war. As soon as he thought of this, Qing Ming pointed to Shizuko Mizutani beside him and said, "Don't stay too far away from me later." Mizutani Shizuko nodded obediently, and did not pretend to be pretentious and said that she did not need protection, nor was she blinded by hatred, and shouted to avenge Furukawa and Ryosuke. Qing Ming is very satisfied with this. Although he had said before that he would not be a nanny for others, if his companions were so sensible, he still didn't mind taking action to protect him. After all, there are only 2 of them left in Class 17. If the other party dies, then he will really become a lonely person. Time passes by minute. As noon approached, Qing Ming looked at the time and muttered to himself, it should have started there. Unfortunately, this place is a bit far from the battlefield over there, and even if a battle occurs over there, they can't hear it. At this moment, the leader sent news, making everyone cheer up, pay attention to the movements around him, and always prepare to face the enemy. Hiding in the forest on both sides, Qing Ming, like other Konoha ninjas, held Cuba in hand, breathing the air carefully, staring at the river corridor, quietly waiting for the enemy to appear. However, 1 minute or 2 minutes. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. 1 hour. 2 hours passed, but the enemy still did not appear. Qing Ming could clearly detect that there were some subtle commotions in the team. But it was quickly suppressed. In a daze, another half an hour passed. At this time, everyone had been waiting here for 2.5 hours. I don't know if Iwahiden village reacted slowly, or Orochimaru's arrangement played a role, or they didn't choose to take this shortcut at all. In short, the enemy's reinforcements have not appeared. But even if there is a change of road, there is still someone watching it. It is impossible that there is no news at all. Just as everyone was joking, a figure suddenly ran from a distance and penetrated straight into the jungle. Then within a while, the leader came to the news that the enemy would arrive 3 kilometers away, so that everyone would be ready. Chapter 59 Melee. A few minutes later, the Iwajan troops appeared at the end of their vision. After getting closer, Qing Ming counted roughly and 200 people stood out. This made Qing Ming breathe a sigh of relief and thought to himself that Orochimaru's plan was successful. Otherwise, it would be impossible for Yanhiden village to send only such a few people here for such a long time. Now, if 300 versus 200, they have the advantage, and the battle will not be too tragic. The Iwajan team is getting closer and closer. Qing Ming and others have already raised the kuna in their hands. They will launch the first wave of attack on Iwajan when the leader gives the order. But at this moment, the leader Iwai Hiroshinobu suddenly stopped. Seeing this, Konoha Kannon, the leader of the team, did not hesitate at all and immediately ordered, "Come." The next moment, dense kunai flew out from the forest on both sides, like raindrops, shooting towards Iwanin's team. Careful. Seeing this scene, the leader Iwaki Shanjinin immediately shouted. But the attack came too suddenly, and many Iwasaki were hit without reacting, especially some of the ***** who were directly stabbed into hedgehogs and died on the spot. With just one wave of attacks, Iwanin was killed in 1/10 of his life. Then there was the second wave of attack. Iron Ninja was prepared this time and took out his weapons to block it. In the end, only a few unlucky guys died. After all, it was a away game, and the ninja he carried was limited, so after the second wave of attacks, Konoha's team leader issued an offensive order. Suddenly, a group of Konoha cannon rushed out of the jungle with a scream. Before they arrived at the battlefield, several Konoha Yunin launched a third wave of attacks. Several powerful ninja techniques fell from the sky and hit the Iwa ninja's team. Iwaki Shanjini didn't react slowly, so he immediately used ninjutsu to resist, but eventually missed the first move. In the end, nearly 10 Iwai middle shu ninja died under the attack of ninjutsu, and as many as 20 or 30 people were injured. At this time, less than 200 people survived on the battlefield, and dozens of them were injured. Iwajan is also eager to rescue and did not consider that someone would be ambushing. By the time the problem was discovered, it was too late. Otherwise, if you send a few scout teams, you won't lose so many people. But then again, those who can act as scouts are basically the elites among ninjas. But with their configuration and number of people, no matter what kind of elite they are, they will die if they encounter it. So, is it cost-effective to sacrifice some middle and lower ninjas, or is it worthwhile to lose a few elite ninjas? This requires that people of one's own opinion and wise one's own opinion. Kill, 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 kill. Boom, 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 boom. There were shouts and deafening explosions echoed in the scene. Qing Ming did not rush forward very quickly. Before the two sides fought, the middle and lower ninjas were in danger. Because no one knows whether the enemy Shangnan will kill you casually. At this time, no one will abide by the unspoken rules on the battlefield. Therefore, Qing Ming always stayed in the middle of the team. After both sides of the Shangnan took up the battle, he found a Iwai Zongnan. As for why not look for a genital? It's very simple. All the nearby Shinen were picked up by Konoha ninja in front. Obviously, on the battlefield, everyone has their own set of survival rules. When rushing ahead, you may be at risk of force majeure, but the subsequent battles can be a little easier. Retracting his gaze, Qing Ming refocused his attention on the Iwai Zongnan in front of him. Accordingly, the other party was also carrying a long sword, which was a rare ninja in Iwakan village who practiced swordsmanship. Because of its unique geographical environment and values, most ninjas in Iwahide village do not like fancy things like swordsmanship. Compared to swordsmanship, they are more willing to practice serious physical skills and various ninjutsu. Now that I finally met a sword practice Yan ninja, Qing Ming naturally had to compete with him. Similarly, when the man saw Qing Ming was just a nasty, he ran over happily. But he was too happy too early. With a jingling sound, Qing Ming slashed dozens of swords in just a dozen breaths, each of which pointed directly at the opponent's vital points. At first, Iwai Zongren didn't care and didn't think that a little kid like Qing Ming could have such a profound swordsman. After all, genius is not the weeds on the roadside, and can be seen everywhere. So, he resisted it casually. However, as the battle progressed, Iwai Hiko's face became increasingly ugly, and fine beads of sweat gradually emerged from his forehead. The reason for this is very simple. This Iwai Zongren suddenly discovered that in terms of swordsmanship, he seemed to be no match for Qing Ming. He has been in distress several times in the past period of time, and the frequency of distress has been increasing, which makes him extremely nervous. On the contrary, after spending the initial tension, Qing Ming became more and more relaxed. Because he found that not only was the sword technique he practiced was not as good as his Koba flying skill, but his proficiency was also worse than his. So, what else can he worry about? Just so happens that I haven't had the opportunity to practice koi flow sword technique these days and accumulate proficiency. Now I can take advantage of the opportunity to fight and get a few points. Ding ding dang dang. The battle was going on in an orderly manner. Qing Ming fought with Iwai Zongnan while paying attention to the battle situation on Shizuko Mizutani. The person who fought with the other party was also a Zongnan, but his level was not very good. Although he had a slight advantage, he could not completely suppress Shizuko Mizutani. Seeing this scene, Qing Ming felt relieved. Time passes by minute. Soon, more than 10 minutes passed. And as time goes by, the battle on the field becomes more and more intense. It's fine for Konoha's side. Their main purpose is to stop the enemy's reinforcements, so they can drag it if possible. But Iwaijin cannot do it. The other party received the order to rush to the attacked stronghold as soon as possible to support it, so naturally it cannot be delayed for too long. So, next I saw that powerful ninjutsu appeared from time to time on the battlefield of the upper ninja, forcing the surrounding middle and lower ninjas to keep away. Qing Ming's side was no exception. He left the same place with Shizuko Mizutani early. And taking this opportunity, the Iwai hidden Zongnin who fought with him broke away from the battle, and his opponent became another Iwai Ninin. This person is also a Zongnin. He looks very strong. He just killed 2 Konoha Shizunin who joined forces and immediately came to him. Hee, boy, you're not lucky when you meet me. Nishimura Shiping rushed towards Qing Ming with a grim smile, staring at Qing Ming's eyes tightly on the way, as if he wanted to see the familiar sense of fear. As a veteran Zongnin who has been struggling on the battlefield for a year, Uchiha Nishimura knows very well what this rookie who just graduated from ninja school is afraid of. As long as he acts cruel enough, these rookies will not be able to exert 70% of their strength, and even worse, they will be scared by him and urinate. So, fear, novices. Single quote. Nishimura Uchiha shouted in his heart. But until he got closer, he didn't see any fear on Qing Ming's face. The other party's eyes were calm, except for calm. What's going on? Single quote. Nishimura Shippei was upset and felt that he seemed to have caused trouble. But the arrow was on the string and had to be fired. So he shouted loudly, waved Kuwu hard and stabbed Qing Ming. Chapter 60 Kill. Ding. Ding ding ding. Do light sparks sputter. Qing Ming used several swords in a row to accurately block Shiping Nishimura's attack. Then, before he could continue to attack, Qing Ming stabbed out with a sword, reaching the opponent's vital point, and turned defense into attack, forcing him to return to defense. Feeling the chill on the tip of Qing Ming's sword, Nishimura Shiping did not dare to be careless at all. He quickly turned around the kunai in his hand to block Qing Ming's attack. Koshi and the dagger made a harsh friction sound. The distance between the two sides was closer, and a cold light flashed in Shiping's eyes. Then, he saw his body slightly tilted, avoiding the sharp blade of the short sword, and then the kuwu in his hand slid forward, trying to directly attack Qing Ming's neck. The disadvantages in height and size gave Nishimura Uchiha this opportunity. Seeing that Kuwu was getting closer and closer, Qing Ming was not panicked at all. He slightly tilted his toes, and suddenly he took 2 steps back, and Nishimura Uchiha's attack was lost. Before he could continue to change his moves, Qing Ming kicked the ground suddenly, and then he rushed out like a sharp arrow and instantly came to Shiping Nishimura. Then, the short sword in his hand swept across and cut straight towards the opponent's waist and abdomen. Small size also has the advantage of small size, that is, the movements are flexible enough. Just like now, Qing Ming was able to counterattack immediately after avoiding Shihei Nishimura. Correspondingly, Nishimura Shiping's defense back movement was a little slower, but he barely blocked Qing Ming's attack. As the saying goes, one step is slow, one step is slow. Seeing that the short sword was blocked, Qing Ming did not care at all. He immediately closed the sword and tilted it and launched a second attack. The tip of the sword pointed directly at Shiping Nishimura's carotid artery. Ding! A crisp sound of metal collision sounded. Nishimura Shiping returned to defense in time and blocked Qing Ming's attack with the kunai in his hand. But soon, Qing Ming launched the third attack. This time, the dagger aimed at the heart of Uchiha Nishimura. Qing Ming's swordsmanship is like this, and what he cares about is fast, accurate and ruthless. Therefore, when attacking, moves are always in line with the key points. However, Nishimura Uchiha had rich combat experience. When he noticed the danger, he immediately responded, waving the kwaba in his hand and blocking Qing Ming's short sword aside. But this also made him completely lose the initiative. In the following battle, Qing Ming fully utilized the advantages of koi flow sword technique, and the attacks were wave after wave. Correspondingly, Nishimura Uchiha can only defend passively. As time passed, it became more and more difficult for Nishimura Uchiha to resist. Before he knew it, sweat had wet his clothes. If it is just like this, that would be fine. Although I can't kill Qing Ming, Uchiha Nishimura is still confident to save his own life. But the problem is that the other party seems to have not done his best. Yes, Nishimura Uchiha now has a feeling that Qing Ming is practicing sword with him and has not used all his strength. This is a bit scary. Because this means that his life may be lost at any time. It is definitely not that good to be unable to grasp one's own destiny. What to do? Single quote. Nishimura Shigai felt confused and his hands were getting more and more anxious, and when people were anxious, they would inevitably make mistakes. An error means flaws. Qing Ming's eyes flashed, and the short sword in his hand pierced straight out. Immediately, a chill hit my heart and pulled Uchiha Nishimura back from his random thoughts. Then, he saw the short sword that pierced straight into his heart. At this time, it was too late to block it. As a last resort, Shiping Nishimura could only dodge sideways, but Qing Ming's attack speed was too fast, and he grabbed the flaw in his movements. Therefore, although Nishimura Uchiha avoided the vital points of his heart, a deep scar was left on his waist, and blood was soaked in his clothes at that time. This is not over yet. After Qing Ming stabbed the sword, he immediately swung the sword and pulled it horizontally, as if he wanted to expand the opponent's injury. The sharp blade smoothly cut into the other party's body, but Qing Ming's face did not show any joy. Nothing else, this shot was lost. Qing Ming looked up and saw a cloud of chakra smoke dissipating. A human-shaped stone was left when Shiping Nishimura stood before. On the surface of the stone, there was a deep cut, which was obviously just left by Qing Ming. A substitute. Qing Ming whispered in a low voice. That's right, just at the critical moment, Nishimura Uchiha completed the use of ninjutsu, Earth Escape and Earth Substitute, successfully avoiding the ending of death. Looking back at this time, when the other party seemed to have begun to use the Earth Escape, Earth Substitute, when he was sideways avoiding the sword. Otherwise, there will be no time. It turns out that there must be Sharingan. If he opened the Sharingan just now, the other party's actions could not be hidden from him. In this way, he would not be able to use the substitute technique, and he would not realize it later when something happened. But then again, if the Sharingan had been turned on, the other party would not have been able to hold on until now. I'm afraid he would have died under his sword. Retracting his thoughts, Qing Ming looked not far ahead. Nishimura Uchiha was covering the wound on his waist, staring at this place with a nervous look, as if afraid that he would continue to attack. Unfortunately, what you are afraid of is what you come. Since Qing Ming has chosen to take action, it is impossible to give up halfway. I saw Qing Ming touching the ninja bag on his waist, and several shurikens appeared in his palm. Afterwards, he didn't see any aiming moves, so he threw the shuriken out. Nishimura Shiping has been paying attention to Qing Ming's actions, so he reacted the moment Qing Ming takes action. Originally, he thought he could easily avoid it. After all, human energy is limited. It is not easy for Qing Ming to practice swordsmanship to this level at such a young age. He does not believe that Qing Ming's other abilities will be so outstanding. However, the result was that he was wrong. Compared with LV3's koi flow sword technique, Qing Ming's ninja tool throwing is more proficient, and has already reached LV4. Therefore, after Qing Ming shot out these shurikens, the inadequate preparations of Nishimura Uchiha could only dodge hastily. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Qing Ming used the momentary body technique to quickly close the distance. The short sword in his hand swung out again, forcing Shiping Nishimura to deal with it. In this case, he didn't even have the chance to perform ninjutsu. In this way, coupled with the injuries on his body and the huge psychological pressure, he finally persisted for only a few minutes before Qing Ming seized the opportunity and pierced the heart with a sword. The severe pain came, and Uchiha Nishimura stopped and had no choice but to slide down from his hands. He looked down at the short sword inserted in his heart, and then looked at Qing Ming, who had a expressionless face, and a trace of regret flashed in his eyes. Perhaps, from the beginning, he shouldn't have come to Qing Ming. Perhaps, his ending was destined from the beginning. Inexplicably, he thought of Qing Ming's initial calm eyes again. Facing his intimidation, he did not show any emotional fluctuations. It's really a natural ninja. He muttered secretly, and Shihei Nishimura closed his eyes forever. Qing Ming pulled out the short sword casually and let the other party's body fall to the ground. He saw Nishimura Ishihei's last gaze, but he did not think he was a natural ninja. The reason why he is not afraid of the other party's intimidation is just because he has enough strength. What reason do he have to be afraid when facing an enemy that can be killed casually? Therefore, the best way to overcome fear is to master strong enough. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories, and never miss out on a great listen.